It was from the Cataclysm. I can illuminate the technological tree. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 726. The future is promising. Naturally, Yongchang didn't hesitate at all. He directly raised his hand and clicked on the small holographic image beside him. A line of bright white text instantly appeared in the blue picture. Academician MO. This is an accidental discovery I made while studying the quantum consciousness of NUS civilization. The three-dimensional architecture of illuminate has an extremely complex node structure formed internally. Observed from different angles, it has different architectural methods. I believe that this new architectural approach may bring new impetus to our long stagnant optical quantum computer technology. The message is not long, but the amount of information contained within it is extremely large. Yongchang looked away from the message in a daze and looked again at the slowly rotating holographic projection in the sky. As the holographic model slowly rotated, similar but obviously different sections were constantly presented in front of Yongchang's eyes. Everyone. Zhang's eyes showed a bit of obsession, and he murmured, "We have finally waited." After receiving the message from Yongchang, the atmosphere of decadence and the optical quantum computer experiment center was swept away. For these researchers, a clear and promising scientific research goal is even more important than their lives. Research and development work on a new generation of optical quantum computers has started again. Different from the past few times, this time, almost all scientific researchers have strong confidence. The first thing to do is to convert the Italian network node model of NUS civilization, replace it with the computing model in the optical quantum computer, and then use this computing model to conduct a computing power test. Without hardware support, software simulation alone cannot fully unleash the power of the new architecture, but it is enough to see its potential. After all, Italian net is something that NUS civilization has evolved over countless years, and its compatibility with NUS civilization is unquestionable. But the compatibility with the optical quantum computer of human civilization may not be ideal. Regarding this issue, Yongchang also made full psychological expectations. The next step in research and development is to transform this new architecture to make it suitable for the optical quantum computer of human civilization. This process is one that requires a lot of calculations and trial and error. Academician A researcher wearing a white scientific uniform hurriedly ran to Yongchang and whispered, "The calculation model has been completed and can be tested at any time." But Zhang's eyes lit up slightly and he stopped what he was doing. Get ready for a computing power test. Benefiting from the existence of zero, the work of converting the Italian network node structure of NUS civilization did not take much time. This tedious task can be easily completed by consuming only part of the energy and computing power the moment the order was issued. The computing power test quietly began. Looking at the rapidly rising numbers in the holographic projection, Yongchang subconsciously clenched his fists. It must succeed, perhaps because he heard the cry from the bottom of his heart. The data in the holographic projection passed the originally set threshold extremely smoothly after a brief pause. Boom. 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 Seeing this scene, Yongchang's originally calm heart began to beat violently. At this point, the experiment can basically be declared a success, regardless of the future achievements of this architectural approach. At least for now, its potential far exceeds every previous architectural solution. But Yongchang didn't stop. Looking at the upward curve in the rapidly changing numbers, Yongchang's heartbeat became more intense. Perhaps can it work? Miracles. Under the gaze of all scientific researchers, the test results were slowly presented on the giant holographic projection. Zhang opened his mouth slightly, with a complex expression of surprise and fright on his face. Is there any problem with this data? He couldn't even believe his eyes. According to the data from the computing power test, the optical quantum computer using the NUS civilization biological quantum brain architecture has a computing power increase of at least 50%. This is just a rough simulation test. They haven't made any optimization or improvement measures, and they don't even have corresponding hardware support. Even so, the computing power increase can reach an astonishing 50%. What does that mean? For the first time, Yongchang felt the lack of imagination point. He couldn't imagine how much Zero's computing power would be improved once the optical quantum computer using the biological quantum brain architecture came out. But he was certain of one thing, that is, the current human civilization will no longer be constrained by computing power, and the development of human civilization will accelerate again. Yongchang tapped on the holographic projection several times with trembling fingers before he successfully closed the test results in front of him. He turned around, looked at his equally excited companion, and took a deep breath. Cancel all vacations from now on. Recall all furloughed personnel. I want to see the first optical quantum computer using biological quantum brain architecture come out in the shortest possible time. The cancellation of vacation did not arouse dissatisfaction among everyone, and even caused a strange light to shine in the eyes of some scientific researchers. Academician. MO. Is the laboratory still open after 2 o'clock in the morning? A researcher with a slightly smooth head asked excitedly. Yongchang looked at the reflective scalp with a frown. Not open. The moment Yongchang's voice fell, a frustrated wail came from the laboratory. Academician MO. This technology is an important technology related to the future of Renlian. The sooner we make a test machine, the sooner Renlian can achieve large-scale expansion. Academician. MO. Are you going to disappoint the expectations of the majority of Renlian citizens? The black lines on Yongchang's forehead became thicker. He was about to refuse again. Looking at the expectant eyes of the people in front of him, he could only swallow the words on his lips and change them to another sentence. 3 o'clock at the latest. After 3 o'clock, everyone should go to rest. 0. Pay close attention to the physical condition of all scientific researchers. Received. The electronic synthesized voice sounded, according to the latest physical examination report. Academician Yongchang, your body is already too tired and may cause illness at any time. Please go to the medical cabin immediately to complete a 1-hour basic treatment. Listening to the bursts of suppressed laughter around him, his eyes twitched slightly. Okay, I know. As the person in charge of the laboratory, he naturally couldn't go back on his word, so he could only turn around and walk towards the room where the medical cabin was installed. Not long after he left, he heard a burst of laughter coming from the laboratory behind him. The corners of Yongchang's mouth rose slightly, and his steps were obviously lighter. The direction has been revealed, and the future is promising. Chapter 727 Memory Transfer. 1 year later, Earth calendar year 3641. NUS civilization has become a frequent visitor to biological laboratories during further research. Yongchang also discovered a magical phenomenon. Look, Yongchang stretched out his hand and circled a part of the holographic projection data. Compared with the biological currents under normal circumstances, these memory-related biological currents have a higher frequency and greater intensity, and the quantum signal fluctuations they generate are more spectacular. It can often cause fluctuations in the entire Italian open system. Zhengzi reached over and carefully checked the contents of the holographic projection, then nodded and said, "That's true, but so far, we have only found this special bioelectric current in the core area of the network. That's why emotional memory input experiments can only be implemented in the core area of the mind network. Is there something in this, Lu?" Yongchang frowned slightly. "I have a guess. Wait a minute. Let me ask NUS to verify it." As he spoke, he turned to the communication channel on one side and said, "NUS, can you transmit and read the memories of civilized individuals?" "Of course, Professor Lu. This is an easy thing for me." "Then can they do it?" Yongchang asked again. "Can they also actively transmit and read each other's memory information?" "Professor, I don't understand what you mean. Individuals of NUS civilization, do they have this ability?" "NUS Civilization did not respond immediately. Lu Yongchang's eyes moved, and he turned to look at the holographic image in front of him again. The entire Italian network once again erupted with strong biological currents and quantum signals. Obviously, NUS civilization is trying Lu Yongchang's proposal. For a long time. The strong biological current and quantum signals slowly subsided. And NUS's response also appeared in the holographic image on the side. Sorry, Professor, this seems difficult to do. This feels like NUS was silent for a while again. It's like letting your hands control your brain to think. I understand, thank you. Lu Yongchang nodded and looked at Mao Zengzi again. Sure enough, my guess was right. This memory-related biological current is only controlled by the collective consciousness of NUS civilization. In other words, this special biological current can only be produced by the core of the internet. Individuals of NUS civilization can only passively receive memory infusion and cannot actively upload their own memories. Lu Yongchang breathed a long sigh of relief. This is a good thing. This top-down memory transmission mechanism ensures the purity of the core memory bank in disguise. At the same time, it saves us a lot of work. As he spoke, Lu Yongchang opened a new holographic image. This is all the experimental data from this period. We tried several experiments modeled on this particular bioelectric current, with a large number of samples. I have basically completed the deciphering of this type of bioelectrical signals. It has to be said that with the addition of Lu Yongchang, a humanoid plugin, and the skewed computing resources of the Academy of Sciences, the research and development progress of the biological laboratory has reached a level that Mao Zengzi could not have imagined. In just 1 year, the research on ideological stamp has achieved a phase breakthrough. The completion of the deciphering of special bioelectrical signals means that human civilization can implement memory transmission and reading, just like NUS, but this is only limited to NUS civilization. There is no way, in this regard, NUS civilization has unique conditions. Lu Yongchang once believed that this was nature's compensation for the NUS civilization. Although there is still a long way to go before thought stamp technology, he is not too discouraged. Food must be eaten one bite at a time, and scientific research work must be advanced step by step. After completing the memory transmission technology for NUS civilization, can the memory transmission technology for other intelligent life forms be far behind? Therefore, a new experimental plan was quickly put on the agenda to create a false memory for NUS. A few months later, the end of the Earth calendar year 3641. After obtaining NUS's consent and paying a large sum of credits and contribution points, the experiment officially began. After Lu Yongchang gave an order, the electrodes inserted into the core area of Italian network began to simulate that special biological current, sending carefully woven memory information to NUS civilization. In order to prevent accidents, the fabricated memory information was not informed to NUS civilization, even according to Lu Yongchang. The current experiment is only the test phase of the formal experiment, and no memory information will be transmitted to it under the observation of the probe. Shortly after the electrodes started working, the Italian network core started to flash. Driven by it, the entire planet-sized Italian network began to flicker. Seeing this familiar scene, a smile suddenly appeared on Lu Yongchang's face. At this point in the experiment, it can basically be said that it is more than half successful. The biological current slowly dissipated, and the flickering web of thoughts gradually dimmed. NUS, how do you feel? As soon as the experiment ended, Lu Yongchang sent a concerned greeting to NUS civilization. There is no other way. If you want to confirm whether the experiment is successful or not, you can only rely on the stupid method of asking the person involved. I didn't feel anything strange. Hearing this, Lu Yongchang breathed a sigh of relief. He pretended to be casual and said, "That's good. By the way, I saw that you applied for a main star gamma ray surge yesterday. How did you feel?" "Very comfortable." For some reason, the intensity of yesterday's gamma ray surge seemed to be stronger than the previous times. Lu Yongchang took a breath of cold air and turned his head to make eye contact with Mao Zengzi beside him. Success There was no gamma ray surge at all yesterday. This memory is a completely false memory fabricated by the biological laboratory. Really, LV. Yongchang suppressed his excitement and said again in a casual tone, "Can you tell us the details? It is possible that some unknown influencing factors have appeared. We need to send a robot to check the status of Xi. Otherwise, there may be a bad situation in the future where the gamma ray surge is out of control." Concerning its own practical interests, NUS civilization instantly became nervous. PS. I didn't have time to thank you yesterday. Thanks to M729426 for the 2 great certifications. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 728 Major Accident. Yesterday, at 6 o'clock in the morning, People's Federation time, I applied for the gamma ray tide of the main star. Because this matter is related to his future sunbathing, NUS carefully recalled all the details of yesterday. I remember clearly that, because the main star has been more active recently, it has become much more difficult to create a gamma ray surge. It took about 2 people for the Xi to start working. Looking at the words appearing one by one in the holographic projection, Lu Yongchang nodded with an imperceptible amplitude point. This memory has been tested many times, and apart from one obvious flaw, there are almost no logical flaws. Gamma rays are a necessity for NUS civilization to survive. Therefore, Xi has always maintained the grand unified field point. The primary and secondary stars of the HIP 22580 star system have also been continuously emitting gamma rays. It is for this reason that unlike the first wave of gamma rays, the subsequent wave of gamma rays does not require a long preparation time. However, in order to save energy, the intensity of these gamma rays is not very high, and at best it can barely meet the daily needs of NUS civilization. Therefore, the high-intensity gamma ray surges from primary and secondary stars have become a luxury for NUS civilization to improve their lives with the help of credits and contribution points provided by the biological laboratory. They purchase almost every few. It will be redeemed once every day. The Xi was very efficient and soon triggered a powerful wave of gamma rays. When I felt that the intensity of gamma rays began to slowly rise, I spread out all my branches and leaves, ready to enjoy this sunbath. The dazzling light penetrates the atmosphere and shoots straight towards this vibrant planet. Professor, that scene is really spectacular. Lu Yongchang laughed dumbly. Dazzling light, is that a scene from the perspective of NUS civilization? If it were a human being, then everywhere would be filled with powerful radiation that could kill people. The 18 levels of hell are probably nothing more than this. But a problem arises. The speed of gamma ray enhancement this time was beyond my imagination, and it quickly exceeded the Xi's preset threshold. But it didn't exceed my endurance limit. At that time, I thought it was the Xi that adjusted the intensity of the gamma ray tide. It wasn't until I saw the warning on the information display screen that I realized that something unexpected had happened. But having said that, yesterday's sunbathing was the most comfortable sunbathing I have ever enjoyed. Lu Yongchang even saw NUS civilization's deep nostalgia for that virtual sunbathing from the text. By the way, Professor, when will we start the memory transfer experiment? NUS civilization finally remembered the business and asked Lu Yongchang. Experiment? Lu Yongchang was silent for a moment and said softly, "It's over." What? Exclamation mark. You mean I didn't redeem the gamma ray tide at all yesterday? Is everything a fabricated false memory? How is this possible? Exclamation mark. In the holographic projection in front of Lu Yongchang, information from NUS civilization was refreshing at an unprecedented speed. Obviously, Lu Yongchang's words greatly shocked this honest tree. Professor, you won't always do this in the future, right? Seeing this line of text, Lu Yongchang couldn't help but be stunned. When he realized the meaning of this sentence, the expression on his face suddenly became strange. Ahem, don't worry, human civilization is not going to use your labor force for nothing. That's good. Lu Yongchang. What? An upright civilization. But, Nus, did you really not find a flaw in this memory? Since you haven't experienced a gamma ray surge, your stored energy shouldn't have increased, didn't you notice this? Faced with Lu Yongchang's inquiry, Nusi was silent for a long time. But the energy stored in my body has indeed increased. Lu Yongchang subconsciously held his breath and widened his eyes. How is it possible, Professor? This is indeed possible. Mao Zedong's voice came from the side. In humans, psychological suggestions that are powerful enough to cause physiological changes are the best example of mass hysteria. I think a similar situation should have occurred in Nus civilization. For Nus, who has built a collective consciousness, the impact of changing memory is extremely powerful. Lu Yongchang's expression suddenly became serious. He suddenly understood the reason why thought stamp was a sub-dangerous technology. He took a deep breath and spoke to Nus again. According to the experimental plan, we will conduct another memory input experiment on you. The size of the memory input this time is larger, which may have a bad impact on you. Do you agree? After waiting for a few seconds, a line of bright white text faintly appeared in front of Lu Yongchang. I'm ready. Different from the memory input in the first time, the memory input in the second experiment involves the history of Nus civilization. In the second fabricated memory, Nus civilization was born in the HIP 22580 star system. Yes, they are trying to tamper with the most deeply rooted memory in Nus' memory bank. Once this experiment is successful, the thought stamp technology will be mostly completed. This means that human civilization can completely modify the underlying memory of a civilization and artificially create a subordinate civilization that is absolutely loyal to human civilization. Just like the sweeper civilization. Perhaps because the memory data involved this time is too large, the second experiment is obviously more difficult than the first experiment. Even the entire network of thoughts has extremely unstable explosive flashes under the concerns of all scientific researchers. The experiment finally ended safely. But the reaction of Nus civilization made Lu Yongchang's heart tighten instantly. Nus, how are you? Faced with Lu Yongchang's inquiry, Nus civilization did not respond for a long time. The detector set up on HIP 22580 even observed that the huge root system of Nus civilization was twitching like crazy. As for the network of thoughts, it burst out with unprecedented and extremely strong bioelectric and quantum signals. Everything seemed to tell all researchers a fact. A major accident occurred in the experiment. Activate the emergency plan. Lu Yongchang gritted his teeth and shouted loudly, immediately reshape the memory of Nus. P.S. I had something to do tonight, so I only wrote one chapter, and there is another chapter to make up tomorrow morning. Chapter 729 Instinct. The second memory input experiment involved the most basic part of the memory of Nus civilization. Its degree of danger is foreseeable. But this is the threshold that thought stamp technology cannot bypass. If the basic memory cannot be modified, it is impossible to imprint the human stamp in the consciousness of intelligent creatures in order to ensure the safety of Nus civilization. The emergency plan was born. At LV Yongchang's suggestion, the biological laboratory backed up the basic memory of Nus civilization. The difficulty of completely backing up the memory of a civilization that has survived for tens of millions of years can be imagined. Perhaps the sweeper civilization can do it, but today's human civilization certainly can't. Therefore, LV Yongchang can only settle for the second best and only back up some memory content that conflicts with the fabricated memory. Although this will increase the risk of the experiment, it is a helpless move after all. Professor Mao Zedong's shout revealed a bit of surprise. The state of Nus civilization is recovering. LV Yongchang was stunned and immediately turned his head to look at the surveillance screen on the side. As expected. The network of thoughts that had been in a violent state was recovering its former calmness at a speed visible to the naked eye. The thick roots on the surface of HIP 22580F also quickly recovered their tranquility. Looking at the deep gullies on the surface of the planet, LV Yongchang's eyes twitched slightly. What's going on? Has the emergency plan worked? He looked at Mao Zengzi with some doubts. No. Facing LV Yongchang's inquiry, Mao Zengzi swallowed lightly. The emergency plan has not been officially launched yet. How can the speed of transmitting memory be so fast? That is a hint of surprise flashed in LV Yongchang's eyes, but more of it was a look of worry. Was this experiment successful? It cannot be judged at present. Mao Zengzi's breathing was a little hurried. Professor, we can't judge how much impact this memory modification has had on the NUS civilization if its cluster consciousness is damaged as a result. NUS, can you receive the information? LV Yongchang's face sank, and he asked again. No response. In the monitoring equipment, the network entered an unprecedented state of tranquility, with only a few occasional bioelectric and quantum signals proving that it was still alive. The scene in front of him made LV Yongchang's heart sink. This was the first time he experienced the destructive power of sub-dangerous technology. Perhaps because of the help of the technology tree. Since leaving Earth, for LV Yongchang, the road of scientific research has always been an endless road. Occasionally, there will be a few inconspicuous stumbling blocks, but they will not cause much impact. This is also part of the reason why he chose to challenge sub-dangerous technology without hesitation. Another part of the reason is naturally that he saw the high returns that sub-dangerous technology can bring. So high that he subconsciously ignored the warnings given to him by the technology tree. LV Yongchang took a deep breath, his eyes full of solemnity. He couldn't help but ask himself in his heart whether he had lost his awe of science. The answer is no. He still maintains awe of science, but underestimates the dangers hidden behind sub-dangerous technology. The mistake has become a fait accompli, and regret will not play any role. What he has to do now is to help NUS civilization restore its original appearance as much as possible. At least, it can't be in this vegetative state. Read the information of the network of thoughts. After sorting out his mood, LV Yongchang said, monitor and analyze all bioelectric signals. Try to read the core memory content of NUS civilization and find the problem first. Just as the biological laboratory was preparing to rescue NUS civilization, a strong bioelectric current broke out from the core area of the network of thoughts. Wait, seeing this bioelectric signal, LV Yongchang shouted loudly, pause all operations and give NUS some more time. The quantum signal triggered by this bioelectric current instantly lit up the entire network of thoughts. It was like a computer restart. The originally silent network of thoughts quickly resumed its former activity. NUS. LV Yongchang said tentatively. Dear Chief LV, hello. Looking at the text that appeared in the holographic projection, LV Yongchang suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Not only him, but all the researchers in the biological laboratory breathed a sigh of relief. Mao Zengzi raised his hand and wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Professor, I was scared to death just now. I thought we were going to become sinners in history. The crisis was temporarily resolved. Mao Zengzi also had the heart to tell a cold joke. NUS, what happened just now? How are you now, LV? Yongchang did not respond to Mao Zengzi's words and asked NUS again anxiously. Professor, I'm in good condition. At the moment the experiment ended, I realized that my memory was greatly confused. A completely strange but familiar false memory appeared in my consciousness. In that memory, I was born on the planet HIP 22580F. LV Yongchang slowly opened his eyes. Unlike the first experiment, in the second experiment, NUS actually distinguished a false memory. This means that the second experiment failed completely. You found that it was a fabricated memory. I didn't find it at first. Therefore, there was a huge conflict in my core memory. As LV Yongchang suddenly realized it, he was slightly relieved. It seems that the experiment was successful at the beginning. This will also be the next research direction of the biological laboratory. Later, I successfully distinguished the false memory and completed the sorting of the core memory. LV Yongchang, that's it. What about the process? Well, can you tell me how you did it? I don't know, maybe it's instinct? I seem to have compared all the memory information with the two conflicting memories, but I don't know how this was done. LV Yongchang nodded thoughtfully. The experiment has come to this point, and the results are now satisfactory enough. Thank you for your hard work. In view of the impact of this experiment on you, the experimental contribution value and credit points will be doubled. Thank you for your generosity. Can you tell me the time of the next experiment? LV Yongchang laughed. He shook his head and said, it's not certain yet. We need to solve many problems, but don't worry, there will be places for you to earn credit points. Chapter 730. The communication connection has been severed. The atmosphere in the laboratory also became heavy again. This experiment was unexpected. Lu Yongchang took a deep breath. I bear the main responsibility. I underestimated the dangers of this technology, which led to such a big mistake. After the experiment, I will conduct a self-examination at the Academy of Sciences meeting. Fortunately, NUS civilization is not seriously injured. Otherwise, human civilization may lose an extremely powerful boost. Those present are all scientific researchers who study biology. They know better than anyone else the biological contribution of NUS civilization to human civilization. Therefore, no one refutes Lu Yongchang's words. Why Mao Zengzi sighed softly. Professor, I bear the secondary responsibility. Like you, I made the grave mistake of underestimating scientific research. Arrogance is the source of the destruction of civilization. I also need to self-examine at the Academy of Sciences meeting. Looking at Mao Zengzi with a regretful face, Lu Yongchang nodded lightly. Ideological stamp technology is an extremely sharp double-edged sword. I think the next experiment is not suitable to be carried out directly on NUS. Admittedly, this would significantly slow down our research, but NUS as the most loyal ally of human civilization should not be the first experimental subject. As for a solution, I think there will always be one. The voting will begin next. After speaking, Lu Yongchang took the lead in raising his right hand. Mao Zengzi and Lu Xiyuan on the side also unanimously expressed their agreement. After a few seconds. Very good. The proposal was unanimously approved. Lu Yongchang glanced around with a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. 1 month later. Professor, at present, we can only analyze the quantum consciousness and bioelectrical signals of NUS civilization. Mao Zengzi's extremely distressed voice came from Lu Yongchang's office. I tried to analyze the consciousness of the white mouse, but I did not succeed. In the field related to consciousness, NUS civilization has unique conditions, but NUS is the collective consciousness of the entire civilization. If something unexpected happens, why? Mao Zengzi sighed heavily again. The whole experiment seemed to be in trouble. Because of this, Lu Yongchang slowly raised his head and stared at the Italian network bioelectrical signal model that was slowly rotating on the table. The meaning of thinking in his eyes became more and more intense. If how about letting NUS regenerate into the core of illuminate? Lu Yongchang murmured to himself. It's just like it was at the Forgotten Star. What do you mean? Mao Zengzi was stunned, and his originally confused eyes gradually became brighter. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, and have been communicating with Muse a lot. Lu Yongchang exhaled a strong breath, stood up and left his seat, and opened a holographic image. Conducting experiments directly on the core of the Italian network will inevitably affect the cluster consciousness of NUS civilization. This can also lead to all kinds of unpredictable situations. If we conduct an experiment on a blank Italian network core, all information will be blocked and filtered by the blank Italian network, and then read by NUS, so that accidents can be completely blocked. To put it simply, Lu Yongchang hesitated for a while. A small virtual machine is running in the Italian network equivalent to NUS civilization. Mao Zengzi suddenly realized, is this feasible? NUS is not a computer. Can it really do this kind of operation? Lu Yongchang's expression suddenly became strange. In a sense, NUS civilization may know computers better than you. I once told NUS this idea. It thinks it's an easy little thing that it can do as long as it has enough energy. Mao Zengzi. 1 day later, after the experimental plan was approved, the Xi, which was 20 light years away, started operating at full power again. Strong gamma rays surged through HIP 22,580 F like waves, bringing abundant energy to NUS civilization. A brand new Italian core slowly appeared on the surface of the planet as time went by. Different from Forsaken Star, the new core generated this time does not need to bear the heavy responsibility of racial continuation. Strictly speaking, this newly manufactured Italian open core is a defective product. Because of this, the resources and time consumed by this manufacturing task are far less than the manufacturing task of the Forgotten Star Earth calendar year 3642. After the new core was manufactured, the memory transmission experiment was restarted again. Consistent with what Yongchang said, with the help of this virtual machine system, NUC's impact on the experiment was greatly reduced. Yongchang and all biological researchers have also thoroughly witnessed the dangers hidden behind this dangerous technology. During the experiment, the core of the virtual machine crashed several times, and the internally stored memory was completely confused. Thanks to the existence of NUS, after each core collapse, NUS can easily put things right and reorganize the chaotic memory contents. This magical ability made Yongchang marvel. He asked more than once, but the answer he got was similar every time. NUS himself didn't know how he did it. With tens of millions of years of civilization memory, it was as simple as breathing to process a virtual core with only hundreds of years of memory. Usually, people can't explain in detail how they breathe passively. When you think about it, you have changed from passive breathing to active breathing. Everything is instinct. In order to analyze the mystery, after confirming that it would not affect the state of NUS civilization, the biological laboratory finally let go and started a series of high-intensity memory transmission and modification experiments. A large number of high-intensity experiments quickly promoted the research progress of thought stamp technology. The experiment also entered the second stage. The analysis of the consciousness of other creatures. The experimental subjects are tentatively set to be frequent visitors to biological experiments such as mice and gorillas with a lot of experimental experience and the help of Yongchang. The analysis work went smoothly. The memory output link was barely conquered, and the progress of the experiment was stuck in the memory input link. To put it simply, at present, the biological laboratory can realize the memory reading work of experimental creatures such as mice, but it cannot input memory into them. The memory input scheme that worked on the NUS civilization was a mess when it was applied to these creatures. In severe cases, the creature died, and in mild cases, the memory was confused. In short, as of now, the success rate of memory input experiments on creatures such as mice is still 0. Looking at the strange perspective of the image data in the holographic projection, Yongchang frowned deeply. The problem. What is the problem? Chapter 731. The traitor turned out to be me. Professor, I thought of a possibility, just as everyone was struggling with this issue. Lu Xiuan's voice came from the side. You say, Lu. Yongchang came back to his senses and looked at Lu Xiuan, who was standing behind Mao Zengxi with a smile. I feel that the success we have achieved in memory transmission experiments in the past does not depend on our own technology. Wow. Before he finished speaking, there was an uproar in the originally quiet laboratory. Even Mao Zengxi frowned subconsciously and turned to glance at Lu Xiuan, who looked serious. Xiuan, what do you mean? He said with some dissatisfaction. The memory transmission technology of NUS civilization is basically mature. This is the conclusion drawn from many experiments. How can you say, let him finish? Lu Yongchang interrupted. Facing Lu Yongchang's gaze, Lu Xiuan took a deep breath and started to explain again. What if our memory transmission technology has problems and the Italian network core can solve this problem for us? I think that might explain the failures that the lab has experienced during this period. This Lu Yongchang couldn't help but froze on the spot. Not only Lu Yongchang, but everyone in the laboratory was stunned. It has to be said that this blind spot in thinking is indeed something that all scientific researchers have not noticed. During this time, everyone was trying to solve possible problems with mice and other experimental organisms. But what if the problem is the technology itself? As for the verification method, I have a simple idea. Lu Xiuan's voice continued. Use that experimental Italian open core as a transit point. Use that small core to conduct memory transmission experiments on other creatures. If the experiment succeeds, it proves that the problem is ours. For today's biological laboratories, this experimental plan is not difficult to implement. Especially after paying part of the credits and contribution points, NUS civilization vigorously cooperated to transform and reshape the core of the small Italian network. The experiments soon began. Under the transfer of the Italian network core, this experiment was a complete success. A mouse that had never walked through a maze easily passed an extremely complex maze after the experiment and received the food at the back of the maze. The entire process took far longer than that of a white rat that had undergone extensive training. So the mole is actually myself, Lu. Yongchang looked at the experimental results dumbfounded and shook his head helplessly. Although the problem was found, the subsequent solution became a big problem. The current findings show that this has a lot to do with the bioelectrical signals we create. Mao Zhengzi reported the research results to Lu Yongchang with a solemn expression. Perhaps due to the zero-based algorithm, there are some extremely subtle differences between the biocurrent signals we simulated and the biocurrent signals generated by the Italian network core. In simple terms, it is equivalent to a software problem and has nothing to do with hardware facilities. Lu Yongchang tapped his fingers lightly on the desk. Is there a solution? Mao Zhengzi nodded, then shook his head. So far, we have only found a stable and reliable solution. What? Lu Yongchang picked up the water glass on the side and took a sip of the warm wolfberry tea inside, using the Italian core as a converter. PFFT. Cough, cough. Lu Yongchang couldn't hold it back and spit out the wolfberry tea in his mouth. This is also called a solution, but this is the fact. Mao Zhengzi spread his hands and said helplessly, the small Italian network core made by NUS civilization is the best choice. It can accept our simulated creatures very quickly and stably current and convert it into an electrical signal suitable for experimental organisms. But Lu Yongchang hesitated before speaking and raised the water glass again to take a sip of wolfberry tea. There are big safety issues if you do this. NUS civilization is a foreign race after all. As the old saying goes, it is not my race. Mao Zhengzi sighed softly. The problem lies here. I have been looking for a suitable alternative recently, but I don't have any clue yet. Can I imitate the core of illuminate? It's difficult. Mao Zhengzi shrugged. I don't know how this tree evolved. At least the current human civilization cannot imitate it perfectly. Experiments on consciousness and memory cannot tolerate even the slightest error. So Lu Yongchang put down the water glass and tapped his fingers on the desk in front of him again. His eyes wandered to the holographic projection on one side. There, a report on results from the optical quantum computer experiment center was presented. You just said it might be a problem with the basic algorithm. Yes, the cost of changing Zero's basic algorithm is too high and may even lead to extremely serious consequences. So, Mao Zhengzi explained quickly, that'll be easy. The corners of Lu Yongchang's mouth raised slightly and he said in a relaxed tone, go back and let everyone rest for a month. After a month, start the experiment again. Mao Zhengzi looked at LV Yongchang with a dull face. Professor, what do you mean? The experiment is only one step away, shouldn't we? LV Yongchang interrupted Mao Zhengzi again. In 1 month, the new optical quantum computer, based on the biological quantum brain architecture, will be available. The change of the basic architecture will inevitably change Zero's basic algorithm. At that time, the central optical quantum computer where Zero is located is the core of the second network of thoughts. The optical quantum computer array controlled by Zero is the second network of thoughts. This will be a network of thoughts that belongs to humans alone. While computing power resources increase greatly, problems caused by basic algorithms will also be solved. Mao Zhengzi's eyes widened instantly. He held his breath and asked cautiously, the results came out so quickly. Of course. LV Yongchang smiled and glanced at the holographic image. Since we got the biological quantum brain architecture, the entire optical quantum experimental center has been like crazy. Everyone cancelled their vacations, and some even slept in the medical cabin every day to ensure that they had enough energy. With Zero watching, there won't be any big problems. However, after the success, I have to criticize them, especially Yongchang. Zero even put the warning message here. Tell me, is there anyone who is so timid? Mao Zengzi smiled and scratched his head. He suddenly felt that the biological laboratory needed to strengthen ideological work in this regard. Chapter 730 to the self-correction ability of consciousness. The next month. Under the hard work of the Optical Quantum Computer Experimental Center, the first generation of optical quantum computers, based on the biological quantum brain architecture, was successfully launched. After multiple tests, to ensure safety and stability, Zero moved into his new home. As a strong artificial intelligence, Zero took the initiative to replace its basic algorithm, to adapt to the optical quantum computer with a new architecture. The prototype of a network core was born. However, this network core carries Zero, a strong artificial intelligence without emotion. Compared with previous optical quantum computers, the new optical quantum computer born from the biological quantum brain is obviously more suitable for Zero, a strong artificial intelligence. At this time, Zero has evolved to a very deep level, relying on a large amount of data. Under the constraints of the core code, it cannot give birth to emotions. It is precisely because of this that Zero can only approach super artificial intelligence and the continuous evolution and iteration, but can never become super artificial intelligence. But even so, Zero at this time is still better than the quantum consciousness of NUS civilization that has survived for tens of millions of years. The optical quantum computer of the biological quantum brain architecture has undoubtedly greatly liberated the performance that Zero should have. The growth rate of its computing power even surprised Yongchang. The computing power resources that were gradually stretched to the limit became abundant at this moment. Insufficient number of interstellar probes, resulting in a slowdown in expansion. Another billion probes, insufficient resources, build 10 more star devourers, and mine all the minerals in the surrounding star systems for me. The Weapons Research and Development Center applied for computing power to conduct simulation calculation experiments on the material disintegration field. Agreed. Is it enough to give 10 times more computing power? Yongchang swore that he had never fought such a rich war since he left the Earth. Under the extremely violent computing power frenzy, the expansion speed of human civilization has increased again. At this moment, the starfield 35 light-years around the Kepler 452 star system has been classified as the territory of the Milky Way Pan-Human Federation, while human civilization once again blew the horn of great expansion. The memory transmission experiment in the biological laboratory was quietly restarted. Just as Yongchang said. After the algorithm was changed, Zero could perfectly simulate the bioelectrical signal of the core of the mind network. White mice, chimpanzees. The memory input experiments on various experimental creatures were declared successful. A few months later, Yongchang looked at the experimental report in front of him and frowned slightly. Although the memory transmission experiment was declared successful, it did not mean the success of the thought stamp technology. Memory transmission is only the pre-technology of the thought stamp technology. Report on the discovery of the universal self-correction ability of biological consciousness, LV. Yongchang whispered the report in the holographic projection. Yes. Mao Zengzi's voice came from the side. The biological laboratory has recently tried dozens of animals and found this phenomenon different. Animals have different degrees of reaction to false memories input from the outside world. But one thing is certain, the more intelligent the creature, the stronger its reaction to false memories. Correspondingly, they are more likely to find problems with this memory and complete the error correction of their own memory. Simply put, the higher the biological intelligence, the lower the effective memory input. LV. Yongchang nodded thoughtfully. Not only that, Mao Zengzi paused and said again, the intensity of the self-correction phenomenon of consciousness is also closely related to the content of the input memory. The higher the degree of discrepancy between the input memory and the self-cognition of the organism, the stronger the self-correction phenomenon and the lower the memory input effect. For example, if I want to input a memory into you, telling you that water is highly toxic and oxygen is also highly toxic, this Memory is highly deviated from your self-cognition, and it is very likely to cause the self-correction phenomenon of consciousness, and this input memory will also become a piece of garbage in your memory. This point was also shown when conducting a memory input experiment on the NUS civilization LV. Yongchang's expression was a little more solemn, but this is what the thought stamp technology is going to do. Yes. Mao Zedong sighed heavily and opened his mouth to speak but stopped. Actually, the biological laboratory has proposed a solution. LV. Yongchang raised his eyelids and looked at Mao Zedong in surprise. What? High frequency memory transmission. Mao Zedong said with difficulty. High frequency memory transmission technology. As the name suggests, it is to use memory transmission technology at a very high frequency to forcibly break through the self-correction defense line of biological consciousness and firmly implant wrong and false memories into the consciousness of the organism. Just like brainwashing. But everything has two sides. High frequency memory transmission has extremely powerful side effects on organisms. In severe cases, death, and in mild cases, loss of autonomous consciousness. Did this little white mouse pass the experiment? LV. Yongchang followed Mao Zedong and looked at the little white mouse in the isolation cabin in surprise. It is in the isolation cabin. A snow white little white mouse was walking in a strange posture. This strong sense of disobedience made LV Yongchang's forehead twitch slightly. Cough. Mao Zedong scratched his head awkwardly. We input some memories about birds into it. At present, it should think it is a pigeon. The moment the voice fell, the little white mouse jumped suddenly, and at the same time, its short forelimbs flapped twice. LV Yongchang's forehead jumped again. If he was not mistaken, this should be the takeoff action of the pigeon. LV Yongchang sighed softly and said, after the observation is over, euthanasia will be implemented. Mao Zedong nodded quickly. What about other experimental animals? LV Yongchang asked softly. Ahem. So far, only this little white mouse has passed the experiment. Mao Zedong called up an experimental record and showed it to LV Yongchang. The mortality rate of the experiment reached 83.1%. The rate of major injuries such as dementia and vegetative state reached 16.8%. Don't look at this little white mouse jumping around now, but its intelligence has been greatly damaged, and its original memory has become extremely chaotic. Mao Zedong sighed again. If it were an intelligent creature, it would be a schizophrenia, conservatively estimated. LV. Yongchang's eyes twitched again. Who would dare to use such technology? Can it suppress the self-correction ability of the original consciousness for false memories? LV Yongchang said after a moment of silence. It's very difficult. Mao Zedong shook his head. The research during this period made me realize a problem. There are too many mysteries hidden in the consciousness of organisms. The technology we currently have is not enough to touch the consciousness of organisms. Chapter 733 Consciousness Entropy. LV Yongchang could not help but fall into silence. Mao Zedong's words made him feel helpless in the field of scientific research. The more you study, the more you feel ignorant. Even though human civilization has now become a level 5 civilization, it can even decide the life and death of a planet at will. During the research process, he still felt a deep sense of powerlessness and, or at all times, I have to find a way to solve this problem. LV. Yongchang muttered to himself. Suddenly, his eyes lit up slightly. If human beings can only be called an apprentice in the study of consciousness, then the mastery of consciousness by NUS civilization is probably enough to be called a master. Zero contact. NUS. Under Mao Zedong's gaze, LV Yongchang's eyes lit up, and he gave an order with a slightly excited look. Professor, you finally remembered me. In the holographic projection in front, a line of white text quickly appeared. The biological laboratory has not asked me to help during this period, and I haven't earned credit points for a long time. Professor, what do I want to do? Is it the memory transfer experiment from last time? I'm ready. We can start anytime. LV Yongchang. He glanced at Mao Zedong beside him with a strange look on his face. Come to think of it, it seems to be true. After Zero completed the algorithm change, the memory transfer experiment in the biological laboratory has not relied on NUS civilization. Ahem. LV. Yongchang coughed lightly. I called you this time, but it's not for the experiment. What? Exclamation mark. Not for the experiment. Then do I still have credit points and contribution points to get? Looking at the obviously lost text, Lu Yangchang's forehead showed a few black lines. Is this NUS civilization really a money grubber? Not really. Lu Yangchang thought for a while. If you can complete this task, you can get more credit points and contribution points. It's just the difficulty is much higher than previous experiments, Professor. Believe me, I can definitely do it. Hearing about contribution points and credit points, NUS instantly became uneasy, and lines of white information quickly flashed out in the holographic projection point. LV Yangchang considered the wording and simply indirectly put forward his request to NUS. The self-correction ability of consciousness? Professor, you are talking about the self-repair effect of consciousness, right? LV Yangchang's eyes moved. Do you know it? Of course, the self-repair effect of consciousness is very important. Of course I know. Then do you know how to suppress this effect? LV Yangchang took a deep breath, suppressed the excitement in his heart, and asked eagerly. NUS asked, why do you do this? Once the self-repair effect of consciousness is suppressed, consciousness will sooner or later fall into a state of disordered collapse. During this period, I use credit points and contribution points to simply learn some of the technology of human civilization. I think the theory of entropy increase can well explain the self-repair effect of consciousness. In an isolated system, if there is no external force doing work, its entropy value will continue to increase. That is, it tends to be chaotic and disordered. The same is true for consciousness. The consciousness of a creature can be regarded as an isolated system. Without the help of the self-repair effect of consciousness, the entropy of consciousness will continue to increase, and the consciousness of the creature will eventually become chaotic and disordered. LV Yangchang stared at the text and the holographic projection in a dazed point. Unlike the calm look on his face, at this moment, a storm has risen in his heart. NUS civilization should be the most biased civilization he has ever seen. In the field of biological consciousness, even humans of the 5th level civilization can only act as an ignorant apprentice in front of it. What is the self-repair effect of consciousness? LV Yangchang lowered his head slightly and asked NUS, very humbly, is it an existence independent of biological consciousness? The self-repair effect of consciousness is a general term. It can be any information input from the outside world. So, the self-repairing effect of consciousness is almost impossible to be suppressed, and I don't understand why you want to suppress it. LV Yangchang and Mao Zengzi looked at each other. Both of them saw the deep shock in each other's eyes. LV Yangchang pondered for a while, and finally made up his mind to explain the principle of the thought stamp technology to NUS as directly as possible. And told it about the difficulties encountered in the biological laboratory recently. The experiment has come to a standstill. And that's why we haven't contacted you, Professor. You should have said it earlier. LV Yangchang was stunned. I don't know if it's an illusion, but he seems to see deep regret and heartache from the message sent by NUS. My contribution value and credit points. It seems that it's not an illusion. LV Yangchang looked at the holographic image in front of him numbly, and after calming down, he asked, NUS, can you solve this problem? Of course. The self-repairing effect of consciousness is a double-edged sword. When working normally, it can easily resolve abnormal memory fragments in consciousness and bring the creature's consciousness back on track. But if it is affected by the outside world, it will become an accomplice and drag the consciousness of the creature to a deviated path. NUS talked about his own expertise. This is not a secret within our civilization. This is how we treat the mental and consciousness problems of civilized individuals. LV Yangchang took a breath again. The amount of information contained in this text is really too huge. You mean? He swallowed hard. You can affect the self-repair effect of the consciousness of the organism. For individuals of our civilization, I can do it. But for other intelligent creatures, I haven't tried it yet, and I'm not sure. As long as you connect the consciousness of the experimental creature to the network of intention, I can try it. LV Yangchang. What? does this mean? It means that, if this experiment is successful, the self-repair effect of biological consciousness, that has troubled humans for several months can even become a branding iron for ideological stamp in the hands of NUS civilization. After asking about the details of the experiment, LV Yongchang cut off the communication link with a numb face point. He turned his head to look at Mao Zedong, who was also numb beside him, and moved his lips. That should be the wisest decision we made. Mao Zedong nodded in agreement. Fortunately, we did not directly attack NUS civilization at that time, but absorbed it as a subordinate civilization. Otherwise, human civilization might lose a lot of incredible things. Chapter 734 Branding Experiment. Earth calendar year 3645. A mobile experimental ship loaded with various experimental animals slowly sailed into the HIP 22580 star system. In the past few years, with the efforts of LV Yongchang, Mao Zedong and a group of scientific researchers, various technical problems regarding the connection between experimental organisms and the consciousness of NUS civilization have been solved one by one. The thought stamp experiment has also officially begun. Yes, this experiment is no longer a simple memory transmission experiment. Significantly changing the basic memory of organisms is already in the scope of thought stamp technology, according to the plan proposed by NUS. The scientific researchers in the experimental ship brought the experimental organisms one by one to the planet where NUS civilization lives in the specially constructed radiation-proof laboratory. These experimental organisms were anesthetized and sent to the experimental table one by one. Through a series of specially made probes and conduction devices, the brains of these experimental organisms are connected to the core of the NUS civilization network. This formed a strange scene in the radiation-proof laboratory. The area on the left side of the laboratory is filled with a large number of dark brown tree roots filled with wild atmosphere. These tree roots are intertwined and extend to the electrodes and probes in the center of the laboratory. On the right side of the laboratory, there is a high-tech style that is extremely simple. In the bright and clean laboratory, experimental creatures lie quietly on the experimental table. Slender probes and wires are connected to the heads of these experimental creatures. These wires extend to areas that are invisible to the naked eye, making the entire experimental table look extremely neat. The laboratory with white as the basic color is filled with large or small azure blue holographic projections. In these projections, the real-time status of each experimental creature is accurately displayed. The pre-experimental inspection work has been completed. After Lu Xiyuan completed the last part of the inspection task, he said solemnly to the holographic projection on the side, "Apply to start the first thought stamp experiment. Approved." Lu Yongchang's voice came from the loudspeaker and echoed in the clean and tidy temporary laboratory. The thought stamp experiment officially began. As the experimental device was activated, the consciousness of various experimental creatures began to connect with that of NUS. For NUS, who has survived for tens of millions of years, the consciousness of these experimental creatures is like plankton in a vast ocean. Tiny, insignificant. NUS slowed down his movement as much as possible to prevent the strong fluctuations he accidentally generated from scattering these weak little guys. This is not out of love and care for life forms. On the contrary, in NUS's view, these weak and tiny life forms are worlds apart from it in terms of life level. Just like how humans look at bacteria. No one will feel sad and guilty for killing hundreds of millions of bacteria by washing their hands, and NUS will not either. From NUS's perspective, only the life level of human civilization is far higher than its. That is why it is willing to obey the arrangements of human civilization, not to mention that it can get a lot of benefits from it. At this moment, all its caution and prudence are for only one reason. In this experiment, the settlement method of contribution value and credit points is determined based on the experimental results. If the experiment fails, it can only get a part of the basic credit points, or even no contribution value point compared with credit points. It wants to get contribution value more point. Although the technological system of human civilization does not involve the content of consciousness, all roads lead to Rome. and many theories are interlinked. Just like consciousness entropy, this is the conclusion it draws with the help of the technological system of human civilization. Even if it is restricted by its own race, it still has a progressive heart. This is also a common feature of all potential civilizations according to the experimental plan proposed by Chief Lu. For every additional experimental creature that survives to complete the thought stamp experiment, the credit points and contribution value it gets will be greatly increased. In the eyes of us, this is simply a God-given opportunity to brush credit points and contribution points, thinking that he can get a lot of contribution points and credit points immediately and enjoy the uninterrupted sunbathing of 24 people. Nus' consciousness fluctuated slightly. Nus can swear that it was just an extremely subtle fluctuation. It was just a tiny bioelectric signal generated somewhere in the core of the network of thoughts, which could not even resonate with the core of the network of thoughts, let alone the entire network of thoughts. But even so, from Nus' perspective, many of these subtle and almost invisible consciousness points were extinguished by that wave of fluctuations. A strong sense of heartache surged up. Just that moment, how many contribution points and credit points did it lose? Nus hurriedly suppressed the throbbing in his heart and tried his best to calm the insignificant fluctuations in the network of thoughts. Then, it controlled its consciousness, wrapped up those tiny consciousness points, and used its instinct to exert external force on these consciousness points. After waiting for a while, Nus carefully observed the state of these subtle consciousnesses. And after confirming that there was no problem, it carefully transmitted a message to the outside world. You can start branding. In the temporary laboratory. As soon as the experiment began, a large area of azure blue holographic projection turned into orange, yellow, and even blood red. A piercing siren sounded. Academician Lu, a researcher, shouted in panic. Does this need to terminate the experiment? As the person in charge, Lu Xiuan's expression changed slightly, and he shook his head and rejected the proposal. Wait a moment, give Nus some time. As he finished speaking, the alarm gradually stopped. Pieces of orange-yellow holographic projections also returned to the original blue one by one. But the blood-red holographic image remained the same. In the soft blue sporadic blood-red appears particularly dazzling. Remove these experimental creatures, Lu Xiuan said softly. In the thought stamp experiment, death is a normal thing. The current mortality rate is 8.91%. A researcher completed the statistics. Is the mortality rate so high before the experiment even starts? Not only Lu Xiuan, but also Lu Yongchang and Mao Zhengxi, who were far away in the Kepler 452 star system, felt their hearts sink. They were originally full of confidence, but now they gradually lost confidence. This is already the last move to realize the thought stamp technology. At least, before humans have a deep understanding of biological consciousness, this is the last possible solution. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 735, Sub-Dangerous Technology, Thought Seal. You can start branding. As the state of the experimental organism gradually stabilized, a line of white text appeared in front of everyone. Lu Xiuan calmed down and directly issued an order to officially start the experiment. The originally set memory templates flowed along the transmission line towards the experimental animals lying on the experimental table. In order to accurately know the success rate of thought stamp, the biological laboratory made up dozens of different memory templates. Unlike the most original memory information, the content of these memory templates is not detailed, and it has almost no details, but its internal logic has been scrutinized countless times, and it is determined that there are no obvious loopholes. All this is due to the efforts of Nus civilization. The self-repair effect of biological consciousness will automatically supplement the details in the information template after being affected by a sufficiently strong external force. Since these details are generated based on the original memory content of the organism itself, whether in terms of logic, stability or memory diversity. They are far superior to the original high-frequency memory transmission technology. Similarly, this also greatly reduces the burden on biological consciousness under the gaze of many researchers. The progress bar in the holographic projection is advancing bit by bit. As the progress bar filled the last gap, the experiment ended. To everyone's surprise, unlike the scene before the experiment began, the entire experiment seemed extremely calm. As expected, the scene of a large number of experimental creatures dying did not appear. Lucian even showed some doubt in his eyes. Was the experiment really successful? Was the thought stamp really imprinted in the consciousness of these creatures? He directed a scientific researcher and a scientific research robot to remove the still sleeping experimental creatures from the experimental table one by one and put them into separate isolation cabins. Next, it was an extremely boring wait point. When the anesthesia wore off, they could clearly see the experimental effect of the thought stamp. Professor, the first batch of mice have awakened. The electronic synthesized sound sounded in Yongchang's office, and at the same time, a holographic image automatically appeared in front of him. In the picture, a snow-white mouse without any color was lying quietly in place. It seemed that everything was normal. But for some reason, an inexplicable sense of disharmony rose from LV Yongchang's heart. It seemed something was wrong. Suddenly, LV Yongchang's eyes widened. Since waking up, the little white mouse has not taken a breath, and its abdomen has not risen or fallen at all. Accompanied by a burst of alarms, Zero's electronic synthesized voice came again. Professor, it fainted. The little white mouse's abdomen rose and fell slightly again. Obviously, the little white mouse continued to breathe after fainting. LV Yongchang's fingers trembled slightly as he operated on the holographic projection and called up the thought stamp that belonged to this little white mouse. The air is poisonous. HIP 22580 star system. In the temporary laboratory, little white mouse number A1190. The stamp has confirmed that the stamp has been successfully imprinted. Lucian's steady voice sounded forced to sleep, waiting for the stamp elimination experiment. The moment the voice fell, a thin needle was slowly extended under the operation of the mechanical arm and accurately inserted into the body of the little white mouse. Lucian took a step and walked towards the next awakened experimental creature. It was a chimpanzee. It looked at the water bowl in front of it, its eyes filled with extreme fear, and its whole body shrank in the corner of the isolation cabin, as far away from the clean and transparent water bowl as possible. Thought stamp. Water is poisonous. Chimpanzee no. C479. The stamp has confirmed that the imprint is successful. Lucian's voice sounded again. Forced hibernation. He took a step and continued to move forward. Not all creatures have such extreme stamps in their consciousness. Most of the thought stamps in the consciousness of experimental creatures are related to humans. For example, the grey wolf in front of him. Lucian took a deep breath and stood in front of the grey wolf. Through the thick transparent aluminum partition, he slowly raised his right hand. The fan sucked the smell of Lucian into the isolation cabin. The originally grinning grey wolf twitched its wet nose, and the ferocious expression on its face gradually softened. Under the gaze of the scientific researchers, it bent down, lay in front of Lucian, and whimpered and exposed its belly. Thought stamp. Humans are the leaders of the grey wolf population. After completing all the inspections, Lucian suppressed his excitement and sent a good news to the Kepler 452 star system 20 light years away. Thought stamp. Success rate of branding experiment 91.09%, except for the experimental creatures that died at the beginning. The rest of the experimental creatures successfully completed the branding experiment. Nus, do you know the reason why those experimental creatures died at the beginning? In the spirit of scientific research, Lucian asked Nus. Rarely, Nus did not respond to his inquiry immediately. Nus. Lucian frowned slightly and urged again. Yes, sorry, that's my fault. I didn't control the fluctuations of the mind network well. The overly strong fluctuations of consciousness completely dispersed their consciousness. Can you not deduct my credit points and contribution points, Lucian? Before he could speak. LV Yongchang's somewhat excited voice had already sounded. Nuss, you mean that under normal circumstances, the success rate of Thought Steel Seal branding can reach 100%. No, Chief Lu, it is definitely not 100% successful, except for deaths caused by some unexpected factors. Some creatures with too weak consciousness can hardly withstand this branding process. In general, it should be able to reach a success rate of more than 95%. Good. LV Yongchang's hearty laughter came from the speaker. LV, Chief Lu, can you not deduct my contribution points and credit points? The white text appeared again on the Azure holographic projection. Don't worry, it won't be deducted. LV Yongchang's voice was full of smiles. If the thought stamp erasure experiment is successful, I promise that your contribution value and credit points will increase by 10% and will be settled uniformly under the stimulation of credit points and contribution values. Nuss civilization worked even harder. It accurately controlled its own mind network, cooperated with the thought stamp erasure program, and eliminated the imprint in the consciousness of all experimental creatures at the moment the experiment was successful. LV Yongchang, who was far away in the Kepler 452 star system, looked at the orange-yellow cursor in the technology tree space, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The second dangerous technology, thought stamp, has been conquered. Chapter 736 Emperor Eugene, Free Genetic Enhancement Program, Ideology Stamp. With the maturity of technology, LV Yongchang turned his attention to the group of lizardmen who were still playing badly. In a star system 27 light years away from the Kepler 452 star system, the lizardmen live on starships. These dilapidated starships, large or small, some wander in the starry sky, and some run on the synchronous orbit of the planet. Not bad. Unlike the Taladan civilization, the Eugene civilization did not choose to land on the planet to live. Even if the planet was carefully selected, the environment on it is 90% similar to their mother planet. To say the reason. On the one hand, it is a matter of habit. As a star pirate civilization, the Eugene civilization has been accustomed to wandering in the vast universe since the moment it left its mother planet. The long wandering experience has made them completely forget the feeling of living on a planet. On the other hand, Emperor Eugene still has a trace of fantasy in his heart. Sooner or later, it will get a chance to lead a small fleet to escape from this dark cage. In the eyes of Emperor Eugene, this star system is a cage that imprisons Eugene civilization. Human civilization will send supplies regularly, but those supplies are not enough to meet the needs of Eugene people. This was once an initiative of the sociology branch. They tried to tell the lizardmen who were accustomed to plundering through hunger that only by engaging in production and management activities can they obtain sufficient supplies. But the effect of this initiative was not good. Only the lizardmen with the lowest social status suffered from hunger. They are huge in number, but they have no say. In this star system allocated to Eugene civilization, they not only have to endure hunger, but they may also be canned at any time. It is precisely because of this that the population of Eugene civilization has been slowly declining during this period. At that time, this response measure of Eugene civilization really shocked the academicians and researchers in the sociology branch. They tried countless measures, but none of them had much effect. The Eugene civilization also declined little by little over time. In a sense, this subordinate civilization not only did not create any value for human civilization, but even held back human civilization, and Emperor Eugene was also happy to do so. While playing rotten, he secretly made small moves. Of course, these tricks could not be hidden from Zero. After the fleet's central computer was controlled, every move of the entire Eugene civilization was under Zero's surveillance, including Emperor Eugene's naive jailbreak plan. In Zero's assessment, what Emperor Eugene did not even increase the risk value of Eugene civilization around this star system. There are tens of thousands of detectors and a small patrol fleet composed of shipborne drones. The combat power is not strong. For civilizations of the same level, a star system with these defensive forces is like a larger stone on the side of the road. But for the Eugene civilization, this little defensive force is enough to crush all conspiracies and intrigues, while Emperor Eugene was still fantasizing in vain. a touch ion communication was transmitted to his flagship point free genetic enhancement plan. Emperor Eugene looked at the screen in front of him with suspicion, and his orange-yellow vertical pupils were filled with confusion. Human civilization is so kind. It has heard that the group of pandas spent a lot of credit points to get the genetic enhancement plan tailored for them by human civilization. Such a good thing. Eugene civilization can get it for free. There is no free food in the desert. This is a saying that has been circulating in Eugene civilization. Thinking of this, Emperor Eugene shook his head and subconsciously raised his hand to reject the kindness from the Human Union Academy of Sciences. Another new message appeared on the screen. Emperor Eugene narrowed his eyes slightly, and his orange-yellow vertical pupils quickly shrank into a straight line. As a price, the Eugene people who accept the transformation need to pay their own labor for a period of 10 years. It muttered this sentence in a low voice. Has human civilization not given up its transformation plan yet? Emperor Eugene sneered unhappily. They are not like those useless people in Terradon who only dare to stay on the planet to farm. Eugene civilization is destined to belong to the starry sky. Thinking of the scenes during the interstellar war, a fire suddenly rose in Emperor Eugene's vertical pupils, but after thinking about his current situation, he suddenly let out a breath and slumped in his chair. After thinking for a long time, he responded to this message. It has already thought about letting those canned reserves go to explore the truth. If everything is true, then Eugene civilization can take this opportunity to enhance its own strength. Eugene civilization genetic modification plan. There is no doubt that this must be fake. It is just a bait to lure Emperor Eugene. It's true in a meaning is naturally to conduct thought stamp experiments on Eugene people. Professor, what do you think the content of thought stamp should be in the biological laboratory? Mao Zedong looked at the holographic image in front of him and frowned slightly. In the holographic projection, there are suggestions on the content of the thought stamp. One of the proposals was to directly change the basic thinking of these lizardmen and completely correct their deep-rooted plundering ideas. At first glance, it seems very good. But this is the first proposal that LV Yongchang rejected. The reason is very simple. A Eugene civilization that only engages in production and business activities is not of much value. Hearing Mao Zedong's question, LV Yongchang raised his eyelids slightly and scanned every proposal in the projection again. There was a thoughtful light in his eyes. Obviously, for him, this is not something that can be decided casually. It is necessary to preserve the original potential of the Eugene civilization and let them engage in production and business willingly. LV Yongchang's eyes condensed and fell on a proposal. He stretched out his finger and gently clicked. Let's take it. Chapter 737. Memory replacement. Memory modification technology. Based on memory transmission. The operation is relatively complex, but the effect is far greater than memory transmission. Even if the conscious self-repair effect helps to improve, the transmitted memory is ultimately false. Although it has been verified and scrutinized by scientific researchers and zero on a large scale, who knows if there are one or two subtle logical loopholes hidden in it. But memory modification technology is different. It is based on the original memory of the organism. Simply put, it can modify and replace the concept of emperor in the consciousness of Eugene people. Equate Eugene imperial power with human civilization. This is a thought seal tailored for Eugene civilization. The feudal monarchy that Eugene civilization has maintained for countless years has become a boost to human civilization. At this moment. The difficulty of imprinting thought seal has been greatly reduced, and the effect of the seal is also very significant. Theoretically, in the eyes of Eugene people who have completed the thought seal imprint, human civilization is the emperor who has ruled them for countless years. Of course, before the experiment begins, everything is just theory. Because the operation of memory replacement and modification is relatively complicated. The biological laboratory also spent a lot of time, and only after reading a large number of Eugene people's memories did it produce the corresponding program. Then, it was the branding ceremony of thought seal. These low-level lizardmen who were regarded as cannon fodder by Emperor Eugene were anesthetized and sent to the experimental table. With the help of NUS civilization, thought seal officially began to be branded. The Whole process did not take too much time. About an hour later, the first batch of experimenters were sent to the isolation cabin. At the beginning of the experiment, Mao Zengzi, Lu Yongchang and others were still a little worried. After all, compared with the creatures on Earth, Eugene people are completely another species. Who knows whether Thought Seal can work on these lizardmen. Under the watchful eyes of the researchers, the whole experiment developed in the direction expected by everyone. Tabo, a low-level Eugene, when it learned that it was selected as a test subject for the gene enhancement project and was about to be sent to human civilization, its heart was filled with extremely complicated emotions. For a moment, it didn't know whether it should be happy or desperate. Desperate, of course. It was used as a test subject. In its memory, test subjects often have no good end. Happy, it can get rid of the title of canned reserve. Sent to human civilization, it escaped the fate of being canned. Just like that. With mixed emotions, it followed the orders issued by human civilization and walked into a spacious and bright room. Looking at the experimental tables, as well as the electrodes and wires on the experimental tables, its eyes revealed a bit of sadness. Sure enough, it still couldn't escape its fate. The moment it lay on the experimental table, its consciousness sank and it fainted. After an unknown amount of time, it slowly opened its eyes. Its brain was confused, and it didn't know what happened. It raised its head and tried to look around. Suddenly, its body froze. A blue holographic projection appeared beside it, and in the projection, there was a completely unfamiliar creature. Its brain told it that it was a human. Its brain also told it that humans were the emperors who ruled them. Plop. Its body trembled slightly, and its entire body prostrated on the ground. Respected emperor, it shouted in a trembling voice. The next moment, a familiar string of language came from the speaker. A few seconds later, yes, respected emperor, as you wish. As Tabo spoke, he lowered his body to the ground. The projection slowly dissipated, but it still maintained this posture until 5 minutes later, when it trembled and climbed up from the cold ground. Under the gaze of the hidden camera, it opened the holographic image on the side, followed the content in the picture, and began to learn the operating procedures of the Human Union Type I planetary mining machine. Successful, LV. Yongchang looked at the images flashing quickly in the holographic projection and breathed a sigh of relief. Ideological stamp has been successfully imprinted. The current imprinting success rate is 99.97%. Mao Zengzi's slightly excited voice came from the side. Professor, we can start promoting it. LV. Yongchang nodded seriously. Tell the sociology branch to start forcibly promoting ideological stamp. Every Eugene person must be branded with this stamp. Those who disobey will be punished for treason. Since then, the new emperor of Eugene civilization was born. The moment the order was issued, the sociology branch, which had been dormant for a long time, took action again. This was the first time that the sociology branch had taken compulsory measures against a subordinate civilization. Warships loaded with war robots appeared next to the Eugene warships under the supervision of the robots. Tens of billions of Eugene people went to the HIP 22,580 star system in batches from Emperor Eugene to the canned reserve. Without exception. This also brought the most generous credit points and contribution value to the NUS civilization in history. According to the contract, for every successful thought stamp, the NUS civilization can get some insignificant credit points. Although the unit price is low, the quantity is huge. After the imprinting work was completed, the eyes of NUS civilization became the shape of credit points. NUS happily calculated his remaining contribution value and credit points. Suddenly, a violent fluctuation broke out in its network of thoughts. You can actually enjoy a 1,000-year uninterrupted sunbathing service. NUS excitedly waved the tree roots on the surface. Pour those accompanying lost giant insects. They were once again undeserved. Replace the imperial power. Although it is not as good as the means of replacing faith of the sweeper civilization, it still achieved remarkable results. At least, under the pressure of the imperial power, the Eugene people with lower social status began to try to learn various knowledge. About production and management. The population advantage of Eugene civilization also began to gradually play out. As these Eugene people were sent to various star systems to mine, Zero's basic computing power was further liberated. What surprised Liu Yongchang the most was not the above results, it is the advantage of Eugene civilization in military operations under the influence of imperial power. The fearless fighting spirit allows Eugene civilization to exert combat power far beyond the same level of civilization. Especially after they were equipped with some weapons and equipment eliminated by human civilization. The strength of Eugene civilization was further enhanced. During the expansion of territory during this period, the detectors discovered many low-level civilizations below level 3. Not all civilizations are sensible. In the past, when encountering those blind iron-headed civilizations, the human fleet was often dispatched to conquer people with virtue, but this will consume a lot of resources after all. Not to mention the cost of firing a few shots at the destination. Just the fuel cost of the round trip is already a bit of a loss at this time. The greatest role of Eugene civilization is revealed. The Eugene fleet, which has been transformed by the thought stamp, just like before, followed the detectors eliminated by human civilization, and wandered in the territory of the human alliance like stars in the sky. Once they encounter a low-level civilization that they can defeat but is ignorant, they will swarm in, using a big stick in one hand and another big stick in the other, to persuade them to join the Pan-Human Federation. Chapter 738 Anti-Gravity. The research of thought stamp has come to an end. Under the leadership of Mao Zedong, the biological laboratory started a new research project, Consciousness. In the process of researching thought stamp, the shortcomings of human beings in consciousness technology were completely exposed. A fifth level civilization is not even as good as a tree. Neither LV Yongchang nor Mao Zedong can accept this fact, even if the tree is a guy with extremely serious biased subjects. As for LV Yongchang, after leaving the biological laboratory, he naturally returned to his original research project, material disintegration field. The research of thought stamp took a lot of time. Although there was no leadership from LV Yongchang. Relying on the various foundations he laid in the early stage, the academicians and researchers in the laboratory still steadily promoted this extremely difficult project. Of course, the advancement speed was not so ideal. At least for LV Yongchang, this research speed was a bit slow. After so many years, the research project of material disintegration field has only just entered the final stage. He spent a few days in the office, systematically sorting out the scientific research results produced by the academicians during this period. Then, he stood up and left the office. Within a year, the material disintegration field technology must be mastered. The next year, the first laboratory of the Human Union. Under the gaze of all the academicians, LV Yongchang slowly stopped his actions and took a final look at the giant holographic projection in front of him. Finally, he nodded firmly and gratified. That's it. Tell Wilson that the theoretical basis of the material disintegration field has been established, and it's up to him next. Before everyone could react, Zero's electronic synthesized voice came from the speaker. Received. The message has been successfully sent. Before the electronic synthesized voice fell, a slightly belated celebration sounded in the laboratory. Amid the celebration, a small holographic projection appeared beside LV Yongchang, and the flashing information on it attracted his attention. The yellow flashing warning sign, which was different from ordinary information, clearly announced its high priority to the surroundings. When LV Yongchang saw the sending address of the message clearly, his eyes showed a hint of surprise. Anti-Gravity Research Center of the Human Union Academy of Sciences. When he saw this line of words, the memories of several years ago came to his mind again. Yes, after the awakening ceremony, he arranged a research project on anti-gravity technology. Perhaps because the Anti-Gravity Research Center has been silent, or perhaps because he has been too busy in recent years. For a while, he actually threw this project behind his mind. Is there any difficulty? LV Yongchang frowned slightly. Thinking about the difficulties that might be encountered in the process of anti-gravity technology research. His abnormal expression quickly attracted the attention of several academicians around him. Under the curious eyes of Mao Zengxi and Lucian, LV Yongchang slowly raised his hand and gently clicked on the message with a yellow warning sign. His frown quickly stretched, and a deep smile appeared on his face again. Professor Mao Zengxi saw this and hurried to LV Yongchang's side, curiously looking at the small holographic projection. What good thing happened? LV Yongchang smiled lightly and said softly, anti-gravity technology has been broken through. In the future, our large starships will also be able to land on planets. Anti-gravity Research Center of the Human Union Academy of Sciences. Swish. The door of the laboratory suddenly opened, and the eyes of all researchers were attracted. Seeing the figure at the door, Armstrong Joseph's eyes lit up, and he immediately put down his work and greeted him. Hello, Chief Lu, he said with a hearty smile. I heard that the theoretical framework of the material disintegration field has been completed. Congratulations. LV Yongchang paused slightly and looked at the visitor with some curiosity. You are quite well informed. I just came out of the laboratory over there, and you heard it. Joseph laughed and gestured to the distance. Professor, look who that is. LV Yongchang looked in the direction of Joseph's finger. A familiar figure came into his sight. LV Yongchang was stunned. Obviously he didn't expect to see him in this laboratory. Wilson, why did he come to you? Joseph shrugged and said in a loud voice, Professor, he has been a frequent visitor here recently. As for the reason, you should ask him yourself. Joseph's voice woke up Wilson in the distance. The moment he saw LV Yongchang, he hurriedly stepped forward and ran over. Professor, his face flushed slightly, and he waved his right hand excitedly to LV Yongchang. I finally waited for you. LV Yongchang. I heard, you a frequent visitor here. LV Yongchang looked at Wilson in front of him with suspicion and said in surprise, what does this have to do with you? Have you finished your research on material disintegration rays? Wilson, who ran to LV Yongchang excitedly, froze and slowly turned his head to look at Joseph beside him. Joseph, you. His smile had not yet faded, but he forced out a look of disbelief at being betrayed by his best friend. Joseph shrugged again, crossed his arms and said, don't look at me. The research resources of the Anti-Gravity Research Center are all planned, and I can't make the decision. Hearing this, LV Yongchang couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and cast an inquiring look at Wilson again. Professor, this matter is a long story. Wilson smiled awkwardly and scratched his head, whispering, let's make it short. Then we have to start from 3 years ago. Under the leadership of Joseph, LV Yongchang and Wilson slowly walked towards the core area of the laboratory. In general, that's it. Wilson licked his slightly dry lips and stared straight at LV Yongchang's expression. LV Yongchang raised his eyebrows. Relying on the interference and offset technology of the Grand Unified Field on gravity, the gravitational shield of the other starship can be broken. It is somewhat similar to the method of breaking the magnetic field shield. Is this why you are looking for Joseph? LV Yongchang muttered to himself thoughtfully. That's right. The anti-gravity technology he studied is based on the Grand Unified Field theory. Wilson looked at LV Yongchang with a nervous face. Do you think this plan is feasible? He did not respond, but turned his head to look at Joseph, who was leading the way beside him. Hey, I'm asking you a question. Tell me what you think. Chapter 739, Matter Decomposition Canon. Obviously, Joseph has been thinking about this problem for a long time. Hearing LV Yongchang's question, he said directly without any hesitation, theoretically, this is feasible, but compared with breaking the magnetic field shield, breaking the gravitational shield is more difficult. We need a higher precision Grand Unified Field Generation and Control Unit. Not only that, compared with breaking the magnetic field shield, breaking the gravitational shield may require higher computing power support. Don't worry about computing power. LV Yongchang smiled faintly. Since you think it's possible, then this research project is handed over to you. Professor, anti-gravity technology has been broken through, and the laboratory has enough free time to carry out this research. So, Joseph said hurriedly, and suddenly, he widened his eyes. What did you say? Do you agree to this research project, LV? Yongchang smiled and stopped, looking at the scene and the open door in front of him. Why don't you agree? For scientific research, you have to try to get results. Go ahead and try. What if you succeed? The scenery inside the gate was clearly reflected in LV Yongchang's eyes. It was a non-magnetic metal ball of a small size. The metal ball is closed and smooth, and there is no engine port on the surface. In the artificial gravity field of Earth, it quietly floats in the air, as if something invisible is holding it up. As LV Yongchang and others approached, the metal ball began to float slowly. Under Zero's control, it drew graceful arcs in the air. How heavy is it, LV? Yongchang stared at the metal ball that was moving irregularly and asked softly, including the internal control device and antimatter battery pack. Joseph thought for a moment and gave an answer. About 30 meters. Earth, calendar year 3655. Based on theoretical research, the matter disintegration cannon and the shield breaking device for the gravitational shield were successfully developed almost at the same time. Of course, such rapid progress naturally cannot be achieved without the help of LV Yongchang. Both weapons have passed the test in the laboratory. But if they want to go to the battlefield, they still need to conduct actual combat exercises. A target, as usual, shows the standard combat power of the human fleet, the Golden Crow battleship. Inside the command center of Earth. LV Yongchang sat in his seat, watching the two Golden Crow battleships gradually moving away in the holographic projection. Not far away, Wilson and Joseph were whispering. Beside them, Yevgeny stared at the universe outside the porthole with a gloomy face and silence. People's joys and sorrows are not the same. At this moment, he only felt that the two people around him were noisy. This is the command center. What a laughing face. Thinking of the scene where Wilson showed off his matter fission cannon to him some time ago, Yevgeny clenched his teeth again. The power of the antimatter cannon is difficult to continue to increase unless the technology of human civilization has made a breakthrough, such as becoming a level 6 civilization. But by that time, can the antimatter cannon really be used? Thinking of this, Yevgeny's sense of crisis became more solid. A burst of light laughter came from beside him. Tsk. Yevgeny moved his body calmly, as far away from the two people around him as possible. Are you so happy? No, he has to build a more powerful weapon. Thinking of this, his face became more gloomy. This scene completely fell into Lu Yongchang's eyes. He knew the grudge between the two and didn't care, and even chuckled with interest. The laughter attracted the attention of Zhao Ziji beside him. Looking at the confused look on Zhao Ziji's face, he shook his head gently and then stood up from his seat. The first actual combat exercise of the matter disintegration cannon begins now. The matter disintegration cannon begins to charge. Launch the gravitational shield interference device. As the voice fell, a pale green light lit up from the muzzle of one of the Golden Crow battleships. The huge muzzle was a transformation product that mixed technology and hard work. At the same time as the pale green light lit up, the side hatch of the Golden Crow battleship quickly opened, and hundreds of small shipborne drones swarmed out and chased the target ship in front. These shipborne drones are equipped with gravitational shield interference devices. This is the floor of energy weapons. Since there is no carrier, unless the distance is very close, it needs additional devices to help it break the enemy's gravitational shield. Zhao Ziji's voice also rang out. Target ship, shield system is running at full power. Try to maneuver to avoid enemy ship attacks. Under the orders of the two commanders, the two Golden Crow battleships began a chase outside the Kepler 452 star system. The same warship performance. The main operator is Zero. The chase between the two suddenly became meaningless. Every maneuver of the target ship will be analyzed in real time by the attack ship, and the prediction and lock will be completed. It is almost equivalent to fighting each other. After waiting for a while, Lu Yongchang shook his head helplessly and gave the final order directly. Start the gravitational shield interference device. Disintegration. Gun. Fire. The Moment the voice fell, a pale green beam gushed out from the muzzle and shot straight at the target ship point. That was the guiding beam of the material cracking field point. At the same time, the gravitational shield interference device loaded inside the shipborne drone also launched a grand unified field, cracking the target ship's shield system point. Wilson in the distance suddenly flashed a trace of doubt in his eyes. Isn't this a problem? Can Zero crack his own defense system? Before he could think about it, the pale green beam had already reached the vicinity of the target point. The target ship's shield suddenly fluctuated, taking this opportunity to guide the beam, to drive straight in and directly irradiate the target ship point. Obviously, Zero did not make this kind of low-level mistake of hitting myself point. It took the initiative to lower the computing power resources allocated to the target ship's shield system point. The moment the pale green beam hit, a magical and strange phenomenon appeared. The electromagnetic interaction between molecules and atoms began to dissipate, and the complete macroscopic matter, like a brick wall with steel bars and cement removed, began to collapse rapidly. The extremely solid surface armor of the Golden Crow battleship was melting at an extremely fast speed, like a snowflake that encountered a red-hot iron, under the effect of the matter disintegration cannon. Whether it was the surface armor or the internal instruments and equipment, without exception, they were all transformed into the most basic structure, molecules or atoms. Then, they quietly dissipated in the vast universe. Not long after the target ship, whose power was completely dissipated, disappeared. What remained was only a misty cloud composed of countless atoms and molecules like a miniature nebula. Chapter 740. Too much excitement. The Earth Command Center fell silent instantly. The original whispers turned into dust and disappeared into the air instantly, as if they were attacked by a matter cracking cannon. But the silence didn't last long. After about a few seconds, there was an uproar in the command center. Discussions that were countless times noisier than before filled the entire laboratory. In the holographic projection, the huge battleship with a length of 5,000 meters collapsed at an extremely fast speed under the illumination of the miserable green beam. Along with the final explosion fire, these dense particle fog dispersed in all directions at extremely high speeds under the reflection of the firelight and the miserable green beam. A strange and grand scene was formed. This scene deeply shocked everyone present, including Lu Yongchang and Zhao Ziji, who were sitting in the command position. Of course, this also includes Academician Yevgeny sitting not far away. His thick Adam's apple trembled slightly, and he swallowed a mouthful of bitter saliva with great difficulty. Changed. Times have changed. Looking at the slowly spreading miniature nebula, this thought flashed through Yevgeny's mind. The material disintegration cannon in the holographic projection is just a prototype, not even a real first generation product. This means that the future material disintegration cannon will be smaller and more powerful. Perhaps, one day, those ship-based drones equipped with gravity shield interference devices can also emit this terrifying green beam. By that time, are kinetic energy weapons really still necessary? None of the current kinetic energy weapons can achieve such power. Even the latest ship-based antimatter cannon. When the gravity shield is broken, it cannot resolve the battle face to face. On the one hand, enemy ships can quickly evade. On the other hand, enemy ships can also release the matter barrier in advance to consume the antimatter contained in the antimatter cannon in advance. But the material cracking cannon is different. From the chase just now, the advantages of the material disintegration cannon have been fully demonstrated before his eyes. When a gravity shield is breached, it is virtually undefendable. Coupled with the ridiculously exaggerated attack power, he subconsciously held his breath. After more than 10 seconds, the suffocation caused by a lack of oxygen swept through his brain, but his thoughts became particularly clear. He seems found some inspiration. Yevgeny, a call from beside him woke him from his reverie. Yevgeny let out a long sigh and turned to look in the direction of the sound. Wilson was looking at him with a smile on his face. How can your proud antimatter cannon also reach this level? Wilson's Tone was full of provocation. This has almost become a traditional skill for both of them. There is almost no one in the entire Academy of Human Resources who does not know about the grievance between Wilson and Yevgeny. Just like this, the moment Wilson finished speaking, the scientific researchers in the command center turned their heads and looked at them with excitement. Eating melons is a human nature that humans can never get rid of, Professor. Do you want to stop them? As Zhao Ziji spoke, he turned to look at Lu Yongchang beside him. With just one glance, the expression on his face froze. He took a deep breath and looked at Lu Yongchang with an extremely strange expression. Professor, you are such a melon. Want to eat? Lu Yongchang stared closely at Yevgeny and Wilson in the distance, reached out and handed the melon seed bag to Zhao Ziji, and then added, buttery, just out of the oven. Zhao Ziji was silent for a while. Then silently, he reached into the bag and took out a handful of melon seeds, then turned around and entered melon eating mode. Click, feeling the fragrance of melon seeds. Zhao Ziji suddenly woke up. What on earth is he doing? How long do you think the noise will last this time? Lu Yongchang's enthusiastic voice came from behind, and at the same time there was a subtle and clear sound of cracking melon seeds. I bet you 10 minutes, Zhao Ziji. 10 minutes is a bit too long. I'll bet 5 minutes. Yevgeny originally thought that he would be angry after hearing Wilson's words, but this is not the case. He continued to pursue the looming inspiration in his mind, and at the same time, he raised the corners of his mouth slightly, showing a faint smile to Wilson. It's amazing. He praised his opponent unabashedly and stood up from his seat. Facing Wilson's confused eyes and the ghostly expressions of the surrounding scientific researchers, he reached out and held Wilson's right hand. Congratulations, Academician Wilson. Then, with everyone watching, he walked out of the command center. Wilson looked at Yevgeny's back with a blank look on his face, then raised his right hand blankly and looked at it carefully. This is he really Yevgeny? Wilson asked in a low voice to Joseph beside him. Joseph had the same confusion on his face. Or, maybe? Joseph nodded hesitantly. He was too stimulated. The sound of cracking melon seeds stopped at some point. Lu Yongchang took a breath, as if he thought of something, and gave the order with an ugly face. 0. Watch Academician Yevgeny carefully. Don't let him do anything stupid. After leaving the command center, Yevgeny pursued the inspiration in his mind and walked quickly towards the tail of the Earth. Suddenly, he frowned. He is currently in the head area of Earth. The entire Earth is more than 10,000 meters long. In other words, he has to walk at least 10 kilometers. Thinking of this, Yevgeny suddenly stopped his hurried steps and walked towards the maglev train station on the ship in the distance. This scene was captured by several high-definition cameras and clearly presented in front of Lu Yongchang. What does he want to do? Lu Yongchang frowned and murmured in a low voice, the terminal station of this maglev train is the tail area of Earth. Zero's voice sounded quietly. Hearing this, Lu Yongchang was stunned. Tail? What's there to do over there? The tail of Earth is not a fun place. Antimatter engine, curvature engine, tachyon information transceiver, almost all important equipment is concentrated there. Therefore, the permission required to travel to that area is not low. There is no doubt that as one of the leading figures of the Academy of Sciences, Academician Yevgeny has this permission. Professor Wilson's exclamation came from the side. You must stop him. Don't let him do stupid things. Lu Yongchang raised his head and looked at Wilson in front of him. The original proud expression had disappeared without a trace, replaced by deep anxiety and eagerness. Lu Yongchang chuckled, shook his head and said, you two are really, don't worry. If something goes wrong, Zero will stop him immediately. P.S. I went to visit the grave today and got a headache from the rain, so only one chapter left tonight. Will definitely make up for it tomorrow morning. JPG chapter 741 Yevgeny, Iron-039, am just looking for inspiration. For a 5th level civilization, maglev train technology is already quite backward. However, Considering the size of the starship and its portability and comfort, the maglev train is still the first choice for transportation within the ship point. While talking with everyone, Yevgeny quietly got on the train leading to the tail of the Earth point. The train is moving very fast. Not long after it stopped at the terminal point, Yevgeny stood up from his seat in a hurry and left the train point. Seeing Yevgeny walking directly towards the curvature engine and touch iron information transceiver, the atmosphere in the command center became solemn. Following the inspiration in his mind, Yevgeny slowly slowed down. In front of him is an extremely huge hemispherical device. In front of it, humans are as small as ants. Looking at the high-tech construction style in front of him, Yevgeny couldn't help but feel a little emotional in his eyes. This is one of the core components of the warp engine. Macro black hole confinement device. The intergravitons needed to start the curvature engine are obtained from here. Without hesitation, he walked directly towards the main entrance of the huge building. Drop. At the same time as the crisp reminder sounded, the red holographic logo quickly turned into green. Identity verified. Dear Academician Yevgeny, welcome. As Zero's electronic synthesized sound sounded, the closed door quickly opened. Yevgeny calmed down and stepped into it. He has been to this place many times. He circumvented several turns with ease, used his permission to unlock several closed hatches, and finally successfully entered the core area of the miniature black hole constraint device. It is a hollow spherical structure. There is a closed observation corridor on the inner wall of the sphere that surrounds the spherical structure. Yevgeny was in the corridor at this time. Through the transparent aluminum wall in front of him, he cast his sight towards the center area of the spherical structure. It was pitch black. High intensity searchlights illuminated the entire spherical structure as if it were daytime, but the center area was still in deep and extreme darkness. That is the core thing of the entire device, the micro black hole. Looking at the twisted seams around the darkness, Yevgeny finally caught the light in his mind. A grand and shocking scene slowly emerged in his mind. Along with the piercing alarm sound, the miniature black hole restraint device failed. The miniature black hole located in the center area of the sphere slowly falls toward the wall of the sphere in the constraint area. Its strong gravitational force directly tore the extremely solid ball wall into long pieces of debris. Under the influence of gravity, a large amount of finely divided matter forms an elegant tether, slowly rotating around the black hole in the center. It quickly devoured these materials. At the same time, its mass began to grow, and the scope of its gravitational influence also gradually increased. A positive cycle is created. As the size of the macro black hole continues to increase, various devices on the Earth are being sucked into it. In the end, under the bright light of the explosion, the entire Earth was swallowed up by it. A small accretion disk also appeared around the miniature black hole. Yevgeny shuddered violently and woke up from his reverie. Looking at the quiet darkness in the center of the ball, he slowly breathed a sigh of relief. There was a hint of fear on his face, but fortunately this scene was just his fantasy. However, the look in his eyes became more determined. This is the weapon he is looking for. He took a deep breath, and the macro expression on his face showed his extremely agitated mood at this time. Yevgeny subconsciously took a few steps forward, leaned against the transparent aluminum wall in front of him, and stared at the darkness in the distance. A camera accurately captured his macro expressions and movements. There was almost no time to wait. The robot that had been waiting not far away rushed over instantly and pinned Yevgeny to the deck. Before he could react, the biting cold seeped into his body along his skin, causing him to shiver subconsciously. He blinked, gradually realizing what had happened at that moment. Academician Yevgeny, as a holographic projection unfolded, Yongchang's voice also sounded. I have already criticized Wilson scientific research. There is no need to fight to the death. Tell me, you are so old, why do you still want to do such a stupid thing? Yevgeny, silly, stupid thing. He lay on the ground and stared blankly at Yongchang's heartbroken face in the holographic projection. I'm just looking for inspiration. Why is this such a stupid thing? In the holographic projection, Yongchang's expression suddenly paused. Inspiration, that's right. Yevgeny struggled a bit and adjusted to a comfortable lying position under the pressure of the robot. Professor, do you think that if we use macro black holes as weapons, the effect will be greater than that? Material disintegration cannon. I've already thought about it. In the picture, Yongchang remained motionless, staring at Yevgeny with a stiff face. Hello, Professor. Professor Yevgeny grinned and looked at the holographic projection. Is it stuck? Can this thing be stuck too? Professor, please let these robots let me go. I have an idea. I will report to you right away. A few seconds later, the holographic projection in front of him suddenly turned into light particles and dissipated in the air at the same time. The robots that suppressed Yevgeny also let go of their hands at the same time, turned around and left the macro black hole observation corridor. As if nothing had happened. Yevgeny stood up from the ground and rubbed his arms gently. He looked at the backs of the robots leaving, and the corners of his mouth twitched suddenly. No need to think. It must be that old guy Wilson who said something nonsense in front of Professor Liu. Inside the command center of Earth, there was a dead silence. Wilson lowered his eyes slightly and looked at the floor in front of him expressionlessly. Then he moved cautiously towards the door. Wilson. The faint voice of Yongchang came from the side. Professor. Wilson stopped and gave Yongchang an awkward smile. If I say I didn't mean it, would you believe me? Yongchang. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 742, Black Hole Missile and Gravity Bomb. One day later, sitting in his office, Yongchang looked at Yevgeny, who was full of excitement, and tried to keep his expression as calm as possible. Professor Yevgeny was the first to break the silence in the office. Wilson said something nonsense to you, right? Yongchang was slightly stunned. Then he nodded very naturally and gave an affirmative answer. Yes, it was Wilson who did it. Yevgeny was silent for a while, as if he felt that the atmosphere in the office was not right, and hurriedly changed the subject. Professor, I didn't make it clear in the holographic communication just now. Using macro black holes as weapons, I think this plan is very feasible. Seeing that the topic was back on track, Yongchang breathed a sigh of relief. At present, the manufacturing process of macro black holes is relatively mature. Yevgeny stretched out his hand and opened a holographic image, which showed various detailed data and information. Obviously, he did a lot of preparation work in his free time that day. Make the macro black hole confinement device into a warhead and install it on the curvature missile. At the same time, we can also install the corresponding gravitational shield interference device on the curvature missile. Yevgeny called up a design sketch in the holographic image. In this way, we can carry out a powerful attack on the enemy at a very long distance. Professor, please believe that the power of this weapon is definitely not inferior to Wilson's matter disintegration cannon. The most important point is, Yevgeny's expression was slightly excited. Even if the macro black hole does not hit the enemy ship, it can release sufficiently powerful gamma rays, X-rays and high temperatures in the process of swallowing its own missiles, which can also cause certain damage to the enemy ship. Yongchang looked at the design sketch in front of him and nodded thoughtfully. Now that you mention it, I have an idea. If the gravitational field control device and the curvature device are integrated into large artillery shells, it should also produce a good attack effect. Yevgeny looked at Yongchang, who was lost in thought. In some surprise, I can understand the curvature device, but the gravitational field control device, is it really useful? The artillery shells are consumables, so there is no need to put a gravitational shield on them, right? No. Yongchang shook his head. You misunderstood me. Like your black hole weapon, the gravitational bomb also uses gravity-caused damage. We can create a strong gravitational source in the target area. Use the constantly fluctuating gravity to pull the enemy starship. The starship near the gravitational source and the far gravitational source will be subject to very different gravitational fluctuations. The huge tidal force generated is enough to tear apart any starship of the 5th level civilization. Even if the opponent has anti-gravity technology, they cannot completely defend against this level of attack without cracking our gravitational fluctuation algorithm. Black hull missiles, gravitational bombs, matter disintegration cannons. These are symbols of the combat power of advanced civilizations. The reason is very simple. Only by mastering the grand unified theory can civilization use the four basic forces as weapons. 45 years later, in the 3700th year of the Earth calendar, human civilization officially entered the 38th century point. Since entering the Kepler 452 star system, the sweepers and pastoralists seem to have disappeared. At least in this 100 years, human civilization has spent a fairly peaceful period of development. Under the joint catalysis of Ling and Liu Yongchang, human civilization is progressing at an incredible speed. The starfield belonging to the Pan-Human Federation has expanded to 500 light-years thanks to the breakthrough in curvature technology. The highest navigation speed of human civilization has reached an astonishing 100. See the peak of the second level curvature point. It is also the peak of the fifth level civilization point. Therefore, the territory of 500 light years is not huge for today's human civilization. Of course, in the process of territory expansion, human civilization has encountered many civilizations. Among them, the first to third level civilizations account for the vast majority, and the fourth level civilization is only a handful. As for the fifth level civilization, so far, human civilization has not found any trace of its existence, let alone the higher 6th or 7th level civilization. In a sense, this is a normal state. After all, it is too difficult to improve the level of civilization. Under normal circumstances, the development speed of civilization is gradually slowing down. But human civilization is different. Not only does he maintain the original development speed, but he even seems to be accelerating. This is almost an impossible scene. In the long history of this universe, countless civilizations have risen and fallen, including powerful level 7 or 8 civilizations, as well as basic level 1 or 2 civilizations. However, as the level increases, the development speed of civilizations is constantly accelerating. From the Big Bang to today, only 2 civilizations have appeared. The scarcity of high-level civilizations has also created a slightly embarrassing scene. The weapons and equipment that the Weapons Research and Development Department of the Academy of Sciences has spent a lot of effort to update and iterate have hardly been used in the past. Most civilizations are relatively sensible, especially after the Eugene civilization took action. Almost all of them willingly joined the Pan-Human Federation, acting as the torch to support the rapid development of human civilization. The only level 4 civilization that had objections quietly joined the Federation after seeing the power of warp weapons as for powerful weapons such as black hole missiles and gravity bombs. It is still in the warehouse. The only chance they have to see the light of day is actually the test site where the weapons were first successfully developed. Earth in the chief scientist's office. Liu Yongchang lay on his back on the chair with his eyes slightly closed. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and breathed a long sigh of relief. As the technology tree of the 5th level civilization becomes more and more perfect, the fog at the top begins to gradually dissipate. Although he still cannot clearly see the symbolic technology of the 6th level civilization, Liu Yongchang is not impatient at all. As long as he is given enough time, human civilization will become a level 6 civilization sooner or later. This is his confidence and his wish. I hope that human civilization can continue to develop peacefully and live forever. Unfortunately, his prayer was unsuccessful. As a piercing siren sounded, a blood-red holographic projection appeared in front of him. Warn. The interstellar probe encountered an unknown attack. Attack method: curvature antimatter bomb. Preliminary judgment: coordinates of attack: x 408.1 to lie, y -456.56 lie, z 507.96 lie. The relaxed look on Liu Yongchang's face disappeared instantly. 0. Level 1 Combat Readiness Alert. Chapter 743 Attack. 510.2 light-years away from the Kepler 452 star system. Accompanied by a violent explosion, the exploration team consisting of 3 spherical detectors disappeared in the vast universe. The embers of the explosion slowly dissipated, and the originally dense and active particles became scarce as the temperature dropped and time passed, and they continued to cool. The only thing left was the countless fragments flying around to prove the explosion that had just occurred. Earth Command Center. The atmosphere was solemn, How long will it take for the nearest detector to arrive? Zao. Ziggy asked. 10 minutes. A crew member reported loudly. Hearing this, Zao Ziju turned around and looked at Lu Yongchang beside him. Professor, do you think the other party, he, is not friendly? Lu Yongchang said in a heavy tone. These 3 detectors are relatively old and almost obsolete products. The maximum cruising speed is only 30 c, and there is no touch-ion radar, so there is no means of detecting curvature strikes. I just checked the last attack image sent by the detector, and it can be basically judged from it that they were hit by curvature. This means that the other party must be a civilization of level 5 or above. If you start without saying anything, the other party is definitely not an easy character to get along with. Zao Ziggy nodded silently. I think so too. As he said, he turned his head and looked at the porthole in the distance. Outside the porthole, the blue planet is still running quietly as usual. And nearby, a large number of warships and drones are slowly leaving giant spaceports in the far distance. A huge spherical planet with a diameter of 6,500 kilometers is slowly leaving its original orbit. The powerful space-time fluctuations formed a huge wave peak on the highly sensitive touch-ion radar. That is the ultimate weapon of human civilization, the planetary fortress. Chiao. After the breakthrough of curvature engine technology, starships can ignore the influence of the star's gravitational field and directly enter the curvature state in the star system. However, due to the excessive abundance of matter in the star system, accidents such as collision are very likely to occur, so most starships will choose to leave the star system before entering the curvature state. At the same time, the precise control of curvature allows starships to achieve navigation below 1C with the help of curvature engines. The navigation method of human civilization starships has also undergone a qualitative change. Antimatter engines are supplemented, and curvature engines are the main ones. Antimatter engines are used in star systems, and curvature engines are used outside star systems except Chiao. Unlike ordinary starships, Chiao does not carry antimatter engines in the conventional sense due to its huge size and mass. Its power depends entirely on the curvature engine. By adjusting the size of the space-time curvature, it can achieve a navigation speed of 0.20 c. Of course, within the scope of the star system, due to various factors, its maximum navigation speed is only 0.1 c. Although this speed is difficult to compare with conventional starships, it is a planet with a diameter of 6,500 kilometers. After all, the diameter of Mars is only. It is almost equivalent to a Mars. The time of peaceful development is over. Zao Ziggy retracted his gaze and sighed softly. In this regard, Lu Yongchang did not have much emotional fluctuations. It's a matter of time. Human civilization has developed to such a territory before encountering a level 5 civilization. This is beyond my expectation. The moment the voice fell, a strong light appeared outside the porthole. It even overshadowed the light of the main star of Kepler 452. After being filtered through the porthole, the strong light seemed much softer, but it was still a bedazzling. That was the grand occasion of the full power start of the antimatter engine of the expedition fleet, although it is not clear what happened 510.2 light years away, nor is it clear what the other civilization's purpose is. But for this unforeseen attack, human civilization has only one attitude. Fight to the end. Command. A crew member's anxious voice sounded. The first batch of interstellar probes have successfully arrived at the target area. A total of 30. The holographic projection screen in front changed instantly, and the image from 510.2 light years away was presented to everyone almost without any delay. In the empty and cold universe, there is almost no light except for the stars in the distance. The nearest star system is also 5.1 light years away. This is a dead and silent place without any vitality. 30 silver white spherical probes dispersed in formation and explored all around. Ding. A crisp reminder sounded. One of the probes found a fragment more than 1 meter long. Based on the shape and texture of the fragment, it can be easily determined that it is part of the probe of human civilization. The probe easily caught up with the fragment and carefully explored it. It is part of the probe shell. Ko Liangke's voice sounded in the command center, looking at the detection data flashing quickly on the holographic projection. He frowned slightly. Looking at these data, it can be basically confirmed that the explosion was caused by the annihilation of positive and negative matter. This attack method does not seem to be a level 6 civilization. Yongchang nodded and expressed his agreement. The detector has not found any unknown signal sources around it yet. The enemy who launched the attack should not be in this area. Considering the use of warp weapons, they may even be 10 light years away from us. Hearing this, Gao Yang, who was sitting next to Zhao Ziji, frowned and lightly tutted. This is troublesome. The density of star systems in this starfield is very high. There are 7 unexplored star systems within 10 light years alone, let alone 10 light years away. If the other party doesn't take the initiative to attack, we will be very passive. However, considering the original direction of travel of the detector, the star system 5.1 light years away is the most suspicious. Before the words could even be finished, the piercing siren sounded throughout the command center again. Several high-intensity space-time fluctuations were detected. Zeros. Electronic synthesized sound suddenly sounded, and at the same time, the image of the tachyon radar appeared in the holographic image. 30 signal sources with similar strengths appeared in 3 different directions, and flew toward the detector at 50 times the speed of light. Based on distance estimates, the fastest attack will arrive in about 10 days, if the relative motion of both parties is taken into account. This time will be greatly shortened. Lock the attack direction. Zhao Ziji's order has been issued. All detectors move towards the attack direction. Forward. Speed 100 C. Chapter 744 Gap. The order was given. The tachyons transmitted this message 510 light years away at extremely high speeds. 30 silver white spherical detectors entered the curvature state one after another. After a short stay point, they were divided into groups of 3 and 10 and rushed towards the 30 strong signal sources. No, not just 30 silver white spherical detectors. Thousands of bright white light spots have appeared in the huge holographic projection in the command center. That's all the interstellar probes in the nearby starfield. Under Zero's control, these thousands of detectors changed their original courses one after another and surrounded them in the direction of the 30 signal sources. Saturated exploration. Those 3 signal sources that sent out curvature attacks had no idea what kind of scene they were about to face. Only 50 times the speed of light. Yongchang stared at the information in the tachyon radar. After confirming that its speed remained stable, he slowly shook his head. It's too slow. If you look at the speed of curvature navigation alone, this civilization's strength should be inferior to ours. Their strength is roughly equivalent to ours 50 years ago. Although he said this, the expression on Yongchang's face did not relax at all and even became more solemn. However, we cannot take it lightly. What if, like us, these warp weapons are old models? Zhao Ziji nodded silently, with the same solemn expression on his face. Naturally, he would not let down his guard. Because of this, when a lion fights a rabbit, he also uses all his strength. Caillou's dispatch also means that human civilization has used all its power. A few days later, in the dim starry sky more than 500 light years away, a strong and obscure wave suddenly erupted. For most civilizations in the universe, this fluctuation is an existence that they have spent their entire lives trying to detect. Those are the fluctuations of space and time, the waves generated on the ocean of space and time when the curvature engine is running. The silver white spherical detector was the first to break away from the curvature state and hover quietly in the vast universe. In the state of curvature, even the flagship of human civilization, Earth, let alone the detector, would be unable to launch a decent attack. Tachyon radar has sounded the alarm. In the display screen, 10 strong signals are approaching at an extremely fast speed. The next moment, there was a vague fluctuation, and 10 cone-shaped aircraft appeared extremely suddenly in the dark universe. There was barely any pause. Dazzling rays of light burst out from the tails of these cones, quickly tearing apart the original darkness of this starfield. Also appearing at the same time are strong gamma rays. Obviously, the other party turned on the antimatter engine without saying any more nonsense. Driven by the antimatter engine, The cone rushed towards 10 silver white spherical detectors judging from their shape and flight mode. These conical aircraft should be similar to the curvature missiles of human civilization. The other party's behavior also completely shows their attitude. Without the slightest hesitation, Zero also ignited the antimatter engine of the spherical detector almost at the moment the opponent started the antimatter engine maneuver to avoid. Under Zero's control, the 10 detectors performed artistic evasive maneuvers. Under the combined action of the antimatter engine and the curvature engine, the detectors almost went against common sense, going from extreme stillness to extreme motion, and completed a nearly 90-degree orbital change operation. The detector successfully escaped the opponent's first round of attacks. Unfortunately, the missiles launched by the other party are obviously equipped with tracking and positioning systems. The curvature missile missed the target, quickly changed direction, and pursued the spherical detector again. However, their turning radius is obviously much larger than that of spherical detectors. Earth Command Center looking at the increasingly fierce chase on the screen, Yongchang raised his eyebrows slightly. The performance gap between the two sides aircraft has been completely revealed. The basic data has been collected. Yongchang glanced at the holographic images around him and said in a calm tone, "Destroy them, quick. Victory. We still have to find the source of these attacks." After the words fell, the 10 detectors turned on the only weapon high energy laser cannon. With the power of the antimatter engine and curvature engine increasing again, the flight speed and maneuverability of the 10 silver white detectors have been further liberated. The purple laser beams intertwine with each other, forming a constantly moving fishing net. The fishing net moved quickly and surrounded those cone missiles. Laugh. The huge difference in mobility makes these missiles prey in a fishing net. The high energy laser burned the missile's shell and quickly ablated a hole. Boom. The antimatter restraint device inside the missile was destroyed. The moment the antimatter leaks out, the material making up the missile itself is annihilated. Mass is completely converted into energy. An extremely violent explosion also occurred. In the dim universe, a round of mini stars seem to appear, but this is just the beginning and just a signal. The fishing net formed by interweaving high energy laser beams under Zero's control easily and quickly cuts through the outer shell of the curvature missile. Boom, boom, boom. 10 curvature missiles exploded one after another, completely illuminating this dark star field. The fire gradually dimmed. The same scene was happening in the other two directions facing the latest model of interstellar probes. These backward curvature missiles were almost toys for applause. Not only did they not pose any threat, they even improved the basic information of the enemy civilization for human civilization. The unscathed probes reunited and moved towards the direction where the curvature missiles came from. Their next goal was to find out the 3 facilities that launch the curvature missiles. As the saying goes, it is impolite not to return the favor. It's time to let the other party taste the pain of heartache! 515 light years away from the Kepler 452 star system. It is a huge star system. The main star of the star system is a red giant. Around it, there are 13 planets of varying sizes. There is no doubt that this is a star system rich in resources. There are 3 Earth-like planets within the habitable zone of this star system. This is lucky, but also unfortunate. These 3 Earth-like planets have all bred their own lives for a long time. The lives on the 3 planets did not see each other, and they did not know each other's existence. Perhaps it was a coincidence, or perhaps it was inevitable. The civilizations of these 3 planets developed at almost the same speed. In the long history, perhaps the development speed of civilization on one planet would temporarily exceed that of the civilizations on the other 2 planets, but in the end, their development pace was basically similar. They completed the Industrial Revolution at the same time, and liberated productivity at the same time. At the same time, they cast their eyes on the starry sky above their heads, and at this moment the civilizations on these 3 planets suddenly found that they were not alone. Right beside them, there were 2 unknown civilizations accompanying them. Chapter 745, Enriget Alliance. This discovery did not surprise them. Quite the contrary. The civilizations on the 3 planets all fell into panic for a short time. The existence of the chain of suspicion made the 3 civilizations choose to close their doors to the outside world. Anyone who sent information to other civilizations without authorization would be sentenced to death, although no civilization would believe the information sent by other civilizations. While closing the door to communication, the 3 civilizations were using global forces to develop aerospace technology. It must be said that the power of the entire civilization is strong. Under the premise of sacrificing the development of all other industries, these 3 civilizations entered the starry sky in an extremely deformed and premature manner. What followed was naturally war. The flames of war filled the entire star system. It also almost dragged down the 3 civilizations until their eyes saw the vast space outside the star system. The 3 civilizations suddenly woke up and shook hands and made peace. Time is the best medicine. After a long time, the 3 civilizations almost forgot that history and merged almost perfectly together to form a powerful alliance, the Enrijet Alliance. Under the influence of civilization fusion, the technology of the Enrijet Alliance developed very rapidly. In just 2000 years, it was promoted from a first-level civilization to a third-level civilization and successfully walked out of the star system. In the process of exploration, the Enrijet Alliance encountered its first opponent. It was a second-level civilization. The 2 sides clashed over the mining rights of a star system. Under normal circumstances, how could a second-level civilization be an opponent of a third-level civilization? Since then, the Enrijet Alliance has absorbed its first member civilization. As time went on, the Enrijet Alliance was eventually promoted to a 5th-level civilization, and the Alliance also absorbed more than 300 member civilizations. In order to manage the growing alliance, the Enrijet Alliance established the Alliance Council. The members of the council were naturally selected from all member civilizations. The chairman of the Alliance Council was personally served by the leader of the Enrijet civilization. Enrijet Council. The huge room was filled with all kinds of strange and intelligent creatures. But one thing is the same. Almost every intelligent creature is wrapped in a thick life support suit, and at the same time, their expressions are extremely solemn. Is everyone aware of the discovery of curvature fluctuations at the border outpost? The chairman of the council, who was sitting in the first position, kept opening and closing his flat vocal organ, and made a muffled voice. It seems that a level 5 civilization has appeared next to us, in the conference room. It is the only intelligent creature that is not wearing a heavy life support suit. As the leader of the Enrijet civilization, the only level 5 civilization in the alliance, it has the qualifications no one will, and no one dares to question it. As the voice fell, a rustling discussion suddenly sounded in the conference room. The language used by every intelligent creature is the same. The chairman of the council silently glanced around the conference room, gently knocked on the table in front of him, and said again, "Now start voting. How should we treat this strange level 5 civilization?" The conference room was quiet again. After hearing his speech, creatures of different shapes, appearances, and races began to think carefully about this important matter. The chairman of the council looked calm and cast his vote without hesitation. When seeing the text on the screen, most of the intelligent creatures in the conference room showed expressions of horror. Everyone, first of all, let's make one thing clear. According to the report from the border outpost, there may be a large number of similar detectors in the area 10 light years away from the alliance border. Facing the horrified eyes of the members, the leader of the Enrijet civilization stood up and pointed to the sky with a solemn expression. Like us, they are expanding rapidly. The purpose is naturally for us sources. Think about it carefully. What kind of attitude should we have towards them? In addition, according to the report sent back by the border outpost, the cruising speed of the other party's detector is 30 times the speed of light. From this aspect, the strength of this level 5 civilization should be far inferior to ours. It is even possible that it has just become a level 5 civilization. This is an opportunity for the alliance to develop again. After The voice fell. It sat back in its chair again, silently looking at the council members of different forms around it. Time passed by minute. The results of the vote were also slowly presented to everyone. The leader of the enraged civilization showed a satisfied look in his eyes and slowly stood up. Then, I declare that the alliance is in a state of war. Enraged Star System, the fifth planet. This is the combat center of the Enraged Alliance. The civilization leader looked at the explosion of fire on the screen in the silver-white spherical detector that turned into countless fragments and smiled with satisfaction. As expected. The strength of this fifth level civilization is not strong, and it has not even mastered the means of detection for curvature navigation. Has the fleet set sail? He asked. Leader, the Alliance Expeditionary Force has set off and is expected to arrive at the Alliance border in 2 years. A combatant responded to his question respectfully. Victory will belong to Enraged. The civilization leader nodded again with satisfaction and turned to leave the combat center. Interstellar warfare takes a lot of time, and it has other things to be busy with. It was awakened by a piercing siren. Looking at the faint blue warning light in front of it, it hurriedly stood up and began to check the emergency information sent by the combat center. What? Bang. With a dull sound, the display terminal in its hand fell to the hard surface. The faint light emitted by the display terminal complemented the faint blue warning light, illuminating slightly strange patterns on its pale face. It didn't pay attention to this. Its flat vocal organs opened and closed, but no sound came out. After a long time, a hoarse voice sounded, 100 times the speed of light, along with the sound of the door being knocked open. An equally hoarse and frightened shout came. Leader, all the warp missiles we sent were intercepted. Those 30 detectors are heading to the area where the border outpost is located. The combat center is in chaos. It took a deep breath, suppressed the panic and anxiety in its heart, turned and walked towards the door, and interrupted the visitor's words. Sound. The Alliance is level 1 alert. Mobilize all the troops within the Alliance. Its voice paused for a moment, including the troops stationed on the Alliance's borders. Tell all members of civilization that the Alliance's life and death crisis has arisen. Chapter 746 Border Outpost. Border of the Enraged Alliance. The border outpost, which is flat on all sides and convex in the middle, is shaped like a flying saucer and quietly stays in this vast universe. Guarding the border of the Enraged Alliance. Hume sat silently in the observation room and cast his eyes on the picture outside the porthole. Outside the porthole is the unchanging starry sky. Outpost Watchman. This is its position and its code name. It sounds good, but in fact, it is a hard job that no one wants to do. Its mother civilization is an inconspicuous third level civilization in the Enraged Alliance. Almost all outpost watchmen come from third level civilizations. This is normal. The individual scientific literacy of first and second level civilizations is too low, and the training cost is too high, so they are not in the candidate range of outpost watchmen. As for the fourth level civilization, they already have a lot of say, so they naturally look down on this hard job. No one wants to stare blankly at the unchanging starry sky all day long. What's more, in a sense, staring blankly is already the most ideal situation. In case of any unexpected situation, the name of the outpost watchman is often the first to be written on the death list. Thinking of the shocking scene some time ago, Hume felt a deep fear in his heart. The border of the Alliance has been peaceful for a long time, and the civilizations in the surrounding starfields all know that this area is the territory of the Enraged Alliance. Especially after the Enraged civilization mastered the Grand Unified Theory and was promoted to a level 5 civilization, the border watchman almost became the most idle job in the Alliance. Hume never thought that one day he would encounter such a situation. That day, the alarm of the quiet border outpost sounded loudly, and the blue warning light flashed at a very high frequency. Then it saw the signal light of the highest warning level light up, and at the same time, 3 extremely conspicuous signals appeared in the Tachyon radar. Hume subconsciously held his breath. This situation has only appeared in the training materials. Because the situation happened too suddenly, its thinking organ was blank and it completely forgot what operation should be performed. The blue warning light flashed wildly, and the signal strength in the Tachyon radar continued to rise at a speed visible to the naked eye. All this stimulated Hume's fragile nerves. It panted and trembled violently as it searched for the operating manual that was thrown away somewhere. Finally, Hume found it on the dining table next to him. He didn't care about the oil stains on the manual and stretched out his slender fingers to turn it to the last page. 5 level civilization invasion. Should immediately report to the Alliance Council. Plot point. It sat limply on the cold deck, and various memory fragments flashed through its mind quickly. It was a marquee point. There was no way. Being at the border of the Alliance, the first thing the invader saw was it. That was a 5-level civilization. If nothing unexpected happened, it would be the first to die. How could it not panic? Although countless memory images flashed through his mind, in reality, only 1 or 2 seconds had passed. It suddenly came to its senses, crawled to the control console with its hands and feet, and sent a report with its slender fingers. More than 10 minutes later, the information from the council appeared in front of Hume. Looking at the line of cold text, Hume's body, which had finally recovered, trembled again. Attack. The Alliance Council was going to launch an attack directly. It was just a small outpost watchman, and all it could do was execute orders. Although it was extremely terrified, thinking of the consequences of disobeying orders, it still sent out 3 of the latest models of curvature missiles. According to the training process, Hume's body trembled slightly and broke free from the memory picture. According to the poem Feedback from the Tachyon radar, the 3 level 5 civilization detectors had been confirmed to have been destroyed, and he didn't need to panic at all. But no matter how it hypnotized itself, the inexplicable fear still lingered in its heart. That's why it hardly slept a full night in the past few days. It stared at the Tachyon radar display screen in front of it with a dull look and subconsciously. The unchanging straight line suddenly had a slight peak. Hume's eyes widened suddenly, and the sleepiness that had attacked him disappeared instantly. Under his gaze, the peaks expanded instantly, and the number increased rapidly. Although he did not understand the working principle of the Tachyon radar, he still realized the problem when he saw the peaks with higher intensity and more number. 1, 2, 3. Hume's eyes widened and he exclaimed, 30 detectors. With experience, he pressed the warning button on the console with ease and uploaded all the detection data to the Alliance Council. Obviously, the council was already prepared. The order to attack appeared in front of him again. He skillfully unlocked the permission and sent 10 curvature missiles to the predetermined target. At the same time, near the outpost where he was, the other 2 outposts also received the same attack order. A total of 30 curvature missiles were fired from 3 outposts and flew towards the target at a speed of 50 c. It was a few days later. It was different from the leisurely days some time ago. These days, Hume exudes an air of exhaustion. It hadn't slept for a long time since it learned that the second attack had failed. Hume's mind was blank as he looked at the 10 signals approaching from the Tachyon radar. The other 20 signal sources had changed their direction not long ago. It knew that was the direction of the 2 nearby border outposts. As an outpost watcher, there was no word for retreat in its dictionary. It had to obtain the most critical data for the Alliance. Even if the cost of this data was its life. Looking at the approaching wave crest, Hume's expression gradually became complicated. For a moment, it couldn't tell what kind of mood it was in. Panic, anxiety, or confusion. Time passed by. Finally, under its gaze, the 10 wave crests overlapped with the position of the outpost. Then, the wave crest intensity rapidly decreased until it dissipated. It suddenly raised its head and cast its eyes towards the large porthole. Under the illumination of high intensity searchlights, in the deep and dark universe, 10 silver-white detectors were quietly hovering in front of the outpost. The detector was spherical in structure, with almost no redundant structure on it. Even though it knew nothing about the structure of the aircraft, it still sighed from the bottom of its heart. It's so beautiful. At this moment, it suddenly realized its true feelings. It was expectation. Watching the invaders approaching step by step every day, the strong panic and anxiety turned into expectation unconsciously. Looking at the 10 silver-white detectors from a distance, Hume's mood suddenly calmed down. Chapter 747, Level 5 Civilization. There is still a gap. Unknown Tachyon information detected. Information recognition extremely high. A prompt message appeared in front of Hume's eyes. It subconsciously followed the requirements in the operation guide and loaded the dictionary program that came with the message while transmitting the message to the council. This is the Galactic Meta-Human Federation, human civilization. Your unreasonable attack has been regarded as a declaration of war against human civilization. Please explain immediately. One piece of information quickly appeared in front of Hume's eyes. Its newly calm state of mind suddenly experienced some fluctuations. Looking at the information content that had been compiled by the Alliance Council, the corners of its eyes twitched violently twice. What? In the command center located on the 5th planet in the Enraged star system, the Alliance leaders' incredible roar rang out. How dare they say that? They obviously invaded our territory first, and now they are saying such things. You still want us to give an explanation? Bullying. Bullying is too much. It knocked on the console next to it angrily and shouted, "Tell them, this is the territory of the Enraged Alliance. This has been the territory of the Enraged Alliance since 300 years ago." The edited Tachyon information was sent to the silver-white detectors. It didn't take long for the response message to appear in front of everyone. The message was short, but it directly detonated the anger of the Alliance leader. Yeah. Now, this is the territory of the Pan-Human Federation. Surrender or perish. Inside the Enraged Alliance command center, everything fell silent for an instant. Everyone turned their attention to the Alliance leader. Its body was trembling slightly, and its already pale skin looked even paler. Robber. This is simply a robber. Attack. Attack me. At this moment, the leader seemed to have completely forgotten the strength gap between the two sides. In other words, even if it knew the strength gap, it still had to issue such an order. Otherwise, the painstakingly built alliance may completely collapse overnight. Professor, is it really okay for us to respond like this? In the Earth Command Center, Zayoziji hesitated to speak, but finally couldn't hold it back, and asked Lu Yongchang's opinion in a low voice. Lu Yongchang frowned, then nodded thoughtfully. What you said makes sense. Is it really too wordy? As he spoke, he re-edited a message. Hello, robbery. Zayoziji, Enraged Alliance border. Hume looked at the words on the screen and subconsciously held his breath. This is the most domineering civilization it has ever seen. Even the original Enraged civilization had never shown such an obvious desire to attack. An order from the Alliance Council appeared before its eyes. It took a deep breath and pressed the attack button on the console with a numb expression. Curvature missiles, laser weapons, electromagnetic guns, antimatter cannons, full firepower. This is the response of the Enraged Alliance to the requirements of human civilization. Almost at the same time, the 10 silver-white detectors, filled with beauty everywhere, also started to move. At that moment, Hume's eyes widened. It seems to have seen a god in a high-energy laser array composed of dozens of high-energy laser cannons. These 10 detectors shuttled back and forth at a strange and elegant pace. Even if it is slightly touched, it can use its spin to prevent the same location from being exposed to laser light for too long. In the display of high precision detection instruments, those areas attacked by laser beams are repairing themselves at an extremely fast speed. Electromagnetic gun projectiles loaded with antimatter then arrived on the battlefield. The invaders' detector finally launched its only attack, a high energy laser beam. The pulsed laser beam bombarded every electromagnetic gun projectile that hit them with incomparable accuracy. The electromagnetic gun projectiles leaking antimatter were quietly annihilated in the vast universe before they even touched the target, and produced incomparably brilliant fireworks. They are like 10 swordsmen with elegant movements, constantly approaching the target in the light of swords and shadows, seeing the distance between the 10 detectors and the outpost getting closer. Hume felt panic and worry rising in his heart. Suddenly, the Tachyon radar sounded the alarm again. Another strong fluctuation in space and time. It's just that this time the fluctuations in time and space come from behind. Under Hume's gaze, more than 10 large warships appeared in the empty space and immediately attacked the 10 silver-white detectors. After all, it was just a detector, not a ship used for attack. Even Zero is powerless against saturation attacks. Attack after attack fell on its magnetic field shield and gravitational shield, while the laser weapons passed through the not so strong gravitational shield and bombarded its outer armor. Boom. Finally, point with the intense light coming and going. The detector shield generating devices were overloaded one by one. Point without the protection of the composite shield. The detector quickly turned into bright fireballs, briefly illuminating the starfield. Point the conflict gradually came to an end. Point but no one in the Enraged Alliance showed even a trace of joy. Point that was just the other party's detector. Everyone was deeply aware of a problem. Point there is also a gap between the 5th level civilization. After this small conflict, there was a peace that lasted for several years from the increasing number of warships around the border outposts. It can be easily seen that the current peace is just the calm before the storm. Hume, who was still staying in the border outpost, looked at the gradually filling empty universe with a complicated look in his eyes. Warships, artillery, material supply lines. In the past few years, this desolate border area has become lively for the first time. Point. But, is all this really useful, although it is a member of the Enraged Alliance? As a war correspondent who was fortunate enough to witness the conflict with his own eyes, it still believes from the bottom of its heart that the Enraged Alliance will never be the opponent of the Pan-Human Federation. The blue warning light began to flash, and dense peaks appeared on the Tachyon radar. From the intensity of the peaks, it can be seen that the speed of these warships has reached an astonishing 100 C. The gap, like a natural chasm, is clearly displayed in front of everyone. It's finally here. Sighed, picked up the small laser gun that had been prepared long ago, and aimed it at his thinking organ. Point after a slight buzzing sound, everything returned to calm. Chapter 748, 10 Light-Year Defense Line. Border of the Enraged Alliance. Point. Although the territory of the Enraged Alliance is not as vast as that of human civilization, it also covers the starfield of the Enraged star system within a radius of 100 light years. Although the Alliance has absorbed more than 300 civilizations, their quality is uneven, and most of them are first level or second level civilizations that have just left the star system. Point. Level 3 civilization is already the backbone of the Alliance. Point. And level 4 civilization is even more high-end combat power. As for the Enraged civilization itself, needless to say, it is a stabilizing force. Point. The task of border defense is basically undertaken by level 3 and level 4 civilizations. Of course, the Enraged civilization also has corresponding border defense forces, but the Alliance territory is too vast, and the Enraged civilization warships cannot play much defensive role after being dispersed. Point. Under normal circumstances, these level 5 civilization warships often play a deterrent role. Point. For civilizations of the same level, if there is no reinforcement, such a line of defense is as fragile as an eggshell, which will break at the touch point. That is why the most important thing for the Enraged civilization is to determine the attack direction of human civilization. Point. Problems arise. Point. Limited by its own technological level, the Enraged Alliance is not clear about the specific attack route of human civilization at this time. The fleet of human civilization has not yet entered the detection range of the Tachyon radar. So far, the Enraged Alliance's knowledge of human civilization is only those silver-white detectors that have long been blown into countless fragments. Naturally, the Alliance's defense forces arranged around the 3 border outposts where the silver-white detectors were discovered. Point. In order to ensure the success of the interception, under the order of the Alliance leader, the Alliance extended the defense line to a range of 10 light years. This is not an easy task. Point. In order to complete this 10 light year defense line, the Alliance allocated almost all combat capable warships and civilizations in the country. Point. But even so, the 10 light year battle line is still too much for the Enraged Alliance. Point. The defensive power of the defense line has been greatly weakened. Point. But this is a helpless method. Point. According to the plan of the Alliance Council, when the Tachyon radar detects the movement of human civilization, the Alliance will begin to shrink the front line and strengthen the defensive capabilities of the front line. Point. Keeping human civilization outside the border line is the battle plan of the Enraged Alliance. Point. What? Counterattack? Don't be kidding. Point. No one in the Enraged Alliance dares to think about this visible gap in strength. Can you fight back with courage and passion in the Enraged star system? In the command center, the leader of the Alliance stared at the screen in front of him with a serious look. Point on the screen. There is a Tachyon radar image from the front line. Point on the other screen. There is a distribution map of the defense force of the Alliance border. Looking at the 3D distribution map evenly distributed in a range of 10 light years. It frowned tightly. Point human civilization. Where will it come from? What if they make a big circle and attack secretly from other directions of the Alliance? What should it do? Although those border outposts set up every light year can serve as a warning, they cannot stop the enemy's fleet. If the enemy is allowed to penetrate deep into the heart of the Alliance, then this defensive battle will be difficult to fight. After all, most of the civilizations within the Alliance are old, weak, sick and disabled. In the eyes of the 5th level civilization, let alone the 3rd level civilization, even the 4th level civilization is just a bigger ant point. Just as it was thinking about the corresponding countermeasures in its mind, the large screen in front of the command center suddenly showed a slight fluctuation. Point as the blue warning light began to flash, countless strong peaks appeared in the Tachyon radar image. That was the warship of human civilization. All the doubts and thoughts in its mind were completely shattered by these strong signals. It was completely different from what it thought. Point human civilization did not change the direction of attack at all. The huge fleet followed the route of the silver-white detectors at the beginning, announcing its arrival to the Enraged Alliance in an extremely simple and crude way. After a brief moment of distraction, it gave orders in a very strong tone. Looking at the strong signals that were rapidly approaching the border, quick, contract the defense line immediately. Prepare for battle. 10 days later, outside the border of the Enraged Alliance, point accompanied by the extremely strong space-time fluctuations, a large fleet instantly appeared in the deep and dark universe. Point the originally empty universe suddenly became crowded at this moment. Point some of the small meteorites blocking the front of the fleet were quietly turned into a ball of powder under the particle accumulation effect brought by the curvature engine. As if foreshadowing something, point at this time, it was 0.1 light years away from the Enraged Alliance defense line. Point the power of the antimatter reactor in the battleship slowly decreased. Point with the curvature engine running at low power, the fleet continued to approach the destination at a speed of 0.5 c. The human fleet equipped with the latest curvature engine basically eliminated the backward antimatter engine. Point of course, the nozzle of the antimatter engine was not cancelled, but it temporarily stopped releasing strong light and gamma rays. The reason is very simple. Point the current curvature engine can only eliminate the gravitational interference of conventional stars. If we really encounter any extreme celestial bodies, the fleet will still have to rely on the original antimatter engine to drive. Point like superluminal curvature navigation, the curvature state below the speed of light is also space-time moving, while the spacecraft itself does not move. Point therefore, the warships and crew members no longer need to consider the load brought by acceleration. During the acceleration of the starship, they can't even feel any fluctuations. The maneuverability of the warships has also been greatly enhanced. Point, although it is impossible to achieve the ultimate maneuverability of the sweeper civilization that instantly enters a high speed of 0.7 c from a static state, the human warships at this time still realize some maneuvers that ignore the laws of physics. For example, high-speed right-angle turns. The complex factors that determined the maneuverability of warships in the past have gradually become an extremely simple factor: the performance of the curvature engine. Point it is not difficult to foresee. Point when the performance of the curvature engine reaches a certain level, sharp angle turns, instantaneous start and stop, those maneuvers that were difficult to understand at the time will become a reality one by one. Point in the center of the fleet, Titan mothership commander Bay, the probe has completed the initial detection mission. A crew member reported loudly. Point at the same time, a clear star map appeared in the huge holographic projection in front of him. Point in the vast universe with dim starlight, a spherical structure with red light appeared. Point it was a spherical defense line with a diameter of 10 light years, which happened to block the front of the human fleet. Point unlike the defense line on the ground, the defense line in the universe is three-dimensional. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 749, Long Snake Formation. Baixuan raised his hand and gently clicked on the spherical defense line point. Aha! The holographic image quickly enlarged and showed specific information about the defense line point. Densely packed red dots appeared in front of him. They were warships of different models. Since the detector was only observing from a distance, he could only briefly observe the surface structure of this spherical defense line. Preliminary estimates include 100,000 warships. Yongchang sneered. They do take us seriously. This is taking out the entire alliance's wealth. With that said, he turned around and looked at the holographic image on one side. Ziggy, do you have any ideas? In the picture, Ziggy frowned slightly. A defense line composed of 100,000 warships. Our expedition fleet only has 10,000 warships. The tenfold difference in strength is a tough nut to crack, especially since the opponent has the advantage of playing at home. This battle will be difficult. Yongchang nodded solemnly. It's really hard to fight. Perhaps we can take a detour. No. Ziggy interrupted Yongchang. We need to conquer this alliance with an absolute victory. This is Professor Lu's request. The Human Federation needs these low-level civilizations to enrich the Pan-Human Federation. Hearing this, Yongchang's brows furrowed even deeper. In this case, we can only fight head-on. But Ziggy chuckled, stretched out his hand and gently gestured at the huge defensive formation covering 10 light years. With such a large-scale defensive formation, the defense power per unit area will inevitably be weak. I think the one-word long snake formation might be a good choice. Yongchang turned his head and glanced at Ziggy in surprise. One word long snake formation. Not bad, Ziggy said with a bit of a smile in his eyes. After verification by the detector, it is basically certain that the maneuverability of the opponent's warship is far inferior to ours. Coupled with the weak defense power per unit area, this is simply the best opportunity for a long snake formation. What's more, Ziggy manipulated the holographic projection beside him. Under his control, the star map in the command center began to change. Did you see that? You mean those two star systems? Yongchang asked with some uncertainty. Certainly, Ziggy nodded in affirmation. These two star systems wrapped in defensive formations can basically be the opponent's material supply points. From this angle, the fleet penetrates directly into the enemy's core supply point. After destroying the two supply points, the fleet will turn and penetrate directly into the enemy's interland. The target is naturally the enemy's central star system. As long as we move fast enough, they can only watch the capital fall. What if? Yongchang pondered for a moment and raised an objection. What if the fleet is surrounded? That's the other party's territory after all. If the other party has hidden power, have you forgotten, Caillou? Ziggy said in a faint voice. Although this guy's sailing speed is a bit slow, I estimate that by the time you break through this line of defense, it will reach the front battlefield. When the time comes, let these warships be dealt with. An order came from the Titan mothership. In the starry sky, the huge fleet started to move like a starry sky beast that had just woken up. The Golden Crow battleships originally surrounding the Titan mothership began to sail faster. The Zuanwu frigate spread out in all directions, firmly protecting the Titan mothership, and the Teoti material reserve ship in the middle point. The shape of the fleet gradually changed from the original square to an elongated cone point. At the same time, a large number of carrier-based drones flew out of the open hatch of the battleship, forming a constantly rotating conical defense network on the outermost layer of the fleet. This is the one-word long snake formation of the interstellar era. Like a sharp arrow, it penetrates directly into the core area of the target. Alliance command center. They slowed down. The leader, who had been staring at the Tachan radar, suddenly shouted, 10C, 5C, they're out of warp state. The enemy ship is 0.1 light years away. Reports from others came from beside him. The preset detector successfully observed the enemy's image. A picture quickly appeared on the big screen. The huge fleet, accompanied by dots of searchlights, suddenly appeared silently in the starry sky. Good luck. The fleet appeared right next to the detector. The distance between the two is only 1 million kilometers. The detector of the enraged civilization was as ridiculous as a small toy in front of this fleet. Looking at the scene in front of him, the Alliance leader's heart skipped a beat. It can almost be predicted that an attack will come soon and completely destroy the detector. They will also lose valuable observation opportunities. Something unexpected happened. The fleet of human civilization quickly passed the detector preset by the Alliance, but did not make the slightest move. It seems the other party doesn't even bother to do anything to this little detector. Likewise, they don't care about the prying eyes of enraged civilization. The observation opportunity was still there, but the Alliance leader's face quickly became ugly. This is an abashed contempt. The number of enemy ships has been determined, and the current sailing speed of the enemy ships is 0.5 c. The enemy ship's route has been determined. Next to him, there was a hurried report. Observations are abnormal. Gamma rays have not been detected yet, and the opponent's conventional driving method is not an antimatter engine. As soon as he finished speaking, there was a commotion in the command center. It is also a 5th level civilization, but the other party uses another unknown conventional driving method. In an instant, everyone present felt a chill rising behind their backs. It is a new type of curvature navigation technology. A researcher slowly raised his arm, pointed at the Tachyon radar image in the distance, and murmured to himself, "The Tachyon radar is still working." Hearing this, the leader of the enraged alliance slowly raised his head and looked at the Tachyon radar. That should have stopped working. Tachyon radar can only passively detect nearby space-time fluctuations. This means that once the warship leaves the curvature state, the Tachyon radar becomes blind. But that is not the case currently. On the Tachyon radar image that should have completely returned to calm, an extremely depressed and subtle wave peak appeared. The leader's face changed slightly. Worse happened. The gap between the technological levels of the two sides seemed to be far greater than he imagined. Chapter 750 Ultra Long Range Attack. Border of the enraged alliance. Kislin silently looked at the slightly weird Tachyon radar image on the screen. Coming from the enraged civilization, he has received information from the command center. The warships of human civilization have more advanced curvature drive technology. Although it is not clear how this is done, it can still draw a simple conclusion. By observing the complex data of the Tachyon radar, the other side's fleet is lining up in a long and neat line and heading towards it. In the image, the fine and weak wave crest has basically overlapped with the border defense line. The distance between the two sides, 0.1 light years. They are coming. Damn. The speed is so fast. The defense line has not completely shrunk yet. Kislin cursed in a low voice. So far, the defense line that extends for 10 light years has only shrunk by 30%. Simply put, there are still a large number of warships on the way. At this point in time, it is obviously not the time to confront human civilization head on. That is why the enraged alliance did not take the lead in launching an attack. It took a deep breath, suppressed the complex emotions in its heart, and gave an order. Send a warning message to the target fleet. Warning. This is the border of the enraged alliance. Please stop your invasion immediately. Unknown fleet, please state your intentions immediately. At this time, the enraged alliance can only hope that human civilization can stop its pace of progress and sit down for negotiations. If the other party is reasonable, the two civilizations will argue with each other, and the alliance's defense line can be successfully contracted. But the development of the situation did not go as it expected. The moment the Tachyon information was just sent, the piercing alarm sounded. In the originally calm Tachyon radar, countless high-intensity peaks suddenly appeared. Kislin couldn't help but choke. The next moment, it screamed with extreme horror. Curvature missile. Enemy. Attack. Defend. Defend immediately. This is an attack from 0.1 light years away. The missiles equipped with the curvature device completely demonstrated their power on the interstellar battlefield, which was different from the training range, a truly long-range strike. Its effective strike range even reached 10 light years, but considering that the opponent also has the technology to detect space-time fluctuations, launching an attack too early will only alert the enemy. Therefore, The human fleet chose to fire at a distance of 0.1 light years. Do you understand the value of close range output? Limited by the curvature technology, the speed of the curvature missile is the same as the navigation speed of the starship, which is only 100 c. It takes about 8 hours to reach a distance of 0.1 light years for interstellar wars. This time is not long, but it also gives the opponent time to intercept point as a 5th level civilization that has absorbed more than 300 affiliated civilizations and established a territory of 100 light years. The war literacy is still good. Almost at the same time when the alarm sounded, the warships on the defense line had entered a state of war. They turned their guns and aimed at the direction of the curvature missiles according to the guidance of the Tachyon radar. Then, a large number of cheap electromagnetic cannon projectiles gushed out from the muzzle and rushed towards the target point. Not only that, accompanied by a vague space-time fluctuation coming from the side, the warships on the Alliance defense line also launched their own curvature missiles at this time, 0.1 light years away. Titan mothership. Commander Bayer crew member turned his head with a strange look on his face and looked at Bayer who was sitting in the command position. There is something you may need to pay attention to. Bayer raised his eyebrows slightly and cast an inquiring look at the crew member who spoke. The crew was silent for a while, and his expression became more and more strange. We detected the Tachyon communication sent by the other party. What is the content? Has the translation program been loaded? Bayer asked subconsciously. The crew nodded and directly projected the content of the Tachyon information onto the huge holographic projection of the command center. Warning. The previous warning message did not have much meaning. It can be seen that it should be a set of templated words. Bayer quickly glanced at it and then cast his eyes to the bottom of the information. There was a lot of information, but the general meaning was that they wanted to sit down and negotiate. The previous attack on the detector was a misoperation, and the Enraged Alliance could even give human civilization a certain degree of compensation. Looking at this information, Bayexo's eyes twitched slightly. When was this information received? The crew scratched his head awkwardly. Ahem. Probably when you gave the attack order and the missile was successfully launched. Bayexon, facing the stares of the crew, Bayexon waved his hand calmly. Just pretend that I didn't receive this message. That's a detector that human civilization has spent countless efforts to make. What's the use of a little compensation? What's more, as long as we win this war, the entire Enraged Alliance will be ours. The crew. Time passed. In the middle area between the human expeditionary fleet and the Enraged border, two extremely strong space-time fluctuations suddenly came out. The curvature missile sent by the Enraged Alliance for interception successfully encountered the curvature missile of human civilization. The entire Enraged Alliance was watching this starfield. Whether the interception could be successful attracted the minds of countless people, not including human civilization. The reason, through the Tachyon communication device installed on the curvature missile, 0, far away in the Kepler 452 star system, had unknowingly taken over the control permission of this batch of curvature missiles. The next moment, under the gaze of all the members of the Enraged Alliance, the direction of the wave crest in the Tachyon radar suddenly showed a 90-degree deflection. This scene not only shocked the battlefield commanders in the Alliance defense line, but also frightened the Alliance scientists in the command center. For a while, a pleasant curse sounded inside the Enraged Alliance. Of course, cursing can't change the result. These commanders and scientists could only watch as the curvature missiles from the human fleet passed through a straight angle and bypassed the interceptor missiles launched by themselves. This is not the point. Under the guidance of the program, the interceptor missiles began to change their trajectories and tried to chase those curvature missiles, but there was a problem. The interceptor missiles with a speed of only 50 c could not catch up with the curvature missiles with a speed of 100 c. The first interception failed. This heavy news weighed heavily on the hearts of all the participants. As for the second wave of interception, it is not difficult to imagine. Those electromagnetic cannon projectiles that can only fly forward in a straight line are like a joke in front of such flexible curvature missiles. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like, Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.